Well, Dan, MJF is back. How you feeling about his promo tonight?
I felt really good about it. I thought he came out, and again, he's not addressing any nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
He's addressing the big players. He's establishing himself as big of a player as there is in the company. Um, the only person maybe he didn't call out that he probably should possibly Samoa Joe,
Yeah.
because they got that whole thing going. I don't mind him moving on from Adam Cole, but I think even just to mention there's some unfinished business with Joe would make a lot of sense. But I love the list of the guys he beat. I loved him comparing himself to Osprey that way. I saw some people on X saying, or Twitter saying, "Oh, he should be more praiseful of Osprey." It's like that's not his character. He's not. He's going to give respect where it's due on occasion, but
Yeah.
he needs to be about MJF. He doesn't need to get away from what he's been. So I thought that was probably a home run segment to start the show. I really thought it was very good, or at least a triple.
I have some mixed views on it. I think that um, one, I didn't like him calling out Okada for not owning a gym membership. I just don't think it's 1988 and we should be shaming somebody who doesn't have acne all over their body and a bodybuilder build that's holding back their work. I just think it's a wrong era for that as an insult. He's a heel. I think he should have come up with something better. I think there was material that was better. He could have said, "You're one of the most respected workers of the past, X number of years. Everybody thinks when you arrived here, you would elevate things, and now you're hanging out with goofs and joshing around about being gifted new cars." Like I think you can go after him without making fun of something that actually feels like it's something people weren't thinking of, and now they are, or if they were, MJF validated it. So I've got a specific criticism there. I would have led with praise, but you gave him plenty of praise. So it's not like I didn't
Yeah,
overall think he was a
yeah.
breath of fresh air. That got to me. I also just, I think at least two other things I didn't like. One, I want MJF to be, like I rolled my eyes at AEW when they did the lights out gimmick in their first show. Like, oh, we're really going back to this. And now we have overruns and we have pre-match attacks by heels. And the ref goes, well, let me reward that by calling for the bell instead of making sure. There's all these cliches that were annoying us, irritants that Tony Khan hasn't extinguished. So that's a little sidebar, but it's sort of part of my frustration because I want MJF, who's kind of the face of AEW in a lot of ways, and will be to a lot of people, to not tell a dated Colorado marijuana joke as his opening line. 24 states have marijuana legal. You do not need every time you go to Colorado to make a reference to how you're high because it's legal and I can't do it anywhere else. That's tired. He needs to be cutting edge and on top of things. That feels like it's 4 years past its freshness date. It's sort of like saying I'm living rent free in your head. Like 40 and 50-year-olds started saying that like 2 years ago, and that's when it stopped being cool. So like it was hard on Samoa Joe. Stop saying that. But MJF in his 20s, let's make sure we're current. Let's not fall back on that stuff. And I compare that to like the lights out gimmick with AEW. And then I think finally, let's see, he took on Okada, Osprey, and
Swerve.
And Swerve. Swerve was fine, I think. The Osprey stuff going after the teeth, I would put that kind of in the same category, or similar to I'm smoking pot in Colorado. It's sort of like everybody does that. And so I know, this is the thing. I hold MJF to a very high standard because I respect the hell out of him. And I'm probably harder on him than I am a lot of people because I know how talented and smart and how much pride he puts into what he says. And when you have months to build up your promo and you come back and you take low-hanging fruit shots at two baby faces and don't take other good ready-made shots at the one heel you went after and you go after him not having a steroid body, basically. I mean, yes, you could argue Okada should train more and look a little more toned. Okay, but that's not what people are thinking about with him. And it felt like a data reference. So those are my critiques of him. But he walked out there and I'm like, okay, this is an energy and a bravado that's been missing from AEW. And I totally agree with a lot of your compliments. I just had some mitigating factors.
Oh yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree with any of those things. I mean, I mean, I certainly thought steroids as soon as he said that about Okada, and it's probably not even within the moment. It kind of gets you thinking about things that aren't really part of the show or shouldn't be. And so I would certainly go along with that. I guess I focused on, and again, as you said, he had a lot of good points. I mean, I focused on when he did that list of guys he'd beaten
Yep.
and keep score, and
Yep.
he's, who are you, Will Ospreay? Look at who I've beaten. I thought that was the highlight of the entire segment, and I like the fact that they're building something with Roosh, because if they're going to go there, they don't just want to have one of these things that they throw on TV with no hype. Now, I'm not saying that Roosh is his number one opponent or anything, but
Right.
I think it seems like there's a plan in place, and sure, I mean, that'll make it more intriguing when things actually happen. I thought they did a lot of things tonight to build intrigue in future matches and shows, and that was a positive.
I didn't come away from this promo with a sense of MJF's mission statement. I got a sense of, I've been watching on TV, and since I've been gone, Swerve Strickland became champion, and Okada and Ospreay become big stars, and I want to talk about them. And it's not really a criticism, but he didn't address like Adam Cole and and Wardlow and anybody else like from his past. He didn't lay out what his goal is. Bryan Danielson did later. We'll talk about that promo. I thought that was really good. I like Danielson when he has a mission beyond dream matches, self-indulgent, high star dream matches against opponents he hasn't wrestled. I don't think that draws. I think it's just catering, just paying someone a lot of money to have their hobby be broadcast on TV. I like Danielson, and we'll get into like what that means that he said what he said tonight later. With MJF, I'm fine waiting for it if it has to come more organically, because you want the focus to be on Roosh. You don't want to look past that. So having MJF address things that have been going on while he's been gone is good, but I'm sort of stating not as a criticism or a compliment, but I didn't come away, and maybe I hoped I would have, but I understand them not doing it, with an idea of what is he back for? I mean, other than taking kind of stale, cheap shot insults at three people who have been working while he's been away. But Roosh coming out and kind of low hanging fruit. You Americans are stinky and dirty or whatever. At least established him as a heel, so there's no ambiguity there, and people can cheer MJF going after him. So more good than bad, but and certainly it didn't hit any of the areas where I'd be like, oh no, he said he was going to change, but he hasn't. We didn't get playing to the internet. We didn't get meta stuff. He got a little into Tony Khan in the Bucks, but not enough where it felt like he's going to get bogged down in anything. I want MJF's character to be most of what he did today, which is I'm the best. And if you cross paths with me, I'm going to tear you down verbally, and then I'm going to do even worse in the ring. And I think he establishes character in that way.
Yeah. And again, I would say, okay, he's kind of putting out a State of the Union. And he has enough gravitas to be able to do that. And he's saying, "I'm the alpha. I'm the guy." I mean, no offense to Takeshita, but I'm the alpha. I'm the important guy. I'm going to make sure that everybody knows I'm the important guy, and therefore I'm going to focus my shots on the most important guys. And Ospreay, Will, and now I'm drawing a blank on the one that we just talked about, but that seemed to be relatively Ospreay, Strickland, and
Okada
and Okada, and Okada,
okay, sorry.
And Okada, yeah. And so okay, he's talking about the guys that he wants to be compared to, I would think, and he's just saying I'm in that top tier, and I am the top tier is what he would actually say, because that's what he believed. So I was pretty good with it overall. I definitely agree with the Okada criticism. I didn't care for that.
Now, after what happened to Kevin Duncan when he was with me, and Mike Myers called him out for having his tassel, his string astray, all of a sudden I was like, wait, I think I've got the same problem here. So I got to fix my hoodie as you were
looking
talking.
at my collar, and I got my Nick Bolton jersey in the background there, my original one.
I love it. Yeah, Mike Myers, who contributes to PWTorch, doing the WWE main event reports, used to co-host with me. He showed up in the chat room when Kevin Duncan was co-hosting. He goes, "I can't sleep tonight unless it's like Elaine Bennis and Seinfeld with the dog ear flipped over." He's like, "You got to fix your the string on your hoodie. So all of a sudden I noticed like mine might not be good. So sorry, Dan. I mean, I'm new at this and it's hard for me to stay, focused. The cats are gone. The dog is gone. Yeah, I'm mostly free of distractions. So, but yeah, the string on the hoodie.
This is actually my third time today putting on the headphones and sitting in front of the computer and doing a Zoom. So I gave a live lecture and a review session today.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, so I was telling Todd this. It's a bit of a sacrifice because normally I'm in my super comfortable recliner and kind of just laying back like this. And
tell me about
that's
it.
okay. I may be more attentive this way. So hold me to a higher standard.
Well, I upgraded my mic recently, but even the previous upgrade from the headsets, because I've been through if people listen to our podcast that we're doing 20 years ago and 18 years ago, we put them on the VIP feed for our VIP members on roughly the anniversary date from 18 years ago. Some pay-per-view roundtables, Wade Keller hotlines with tons of behind-the-scenes news on the John Cena Batista stuff and early TNA. And it's cool, but I listened back to the audio quality. I'm like, oh my God, I remember that microphone. It was this like little egg-shaped plastic thing that I held up to my face. And it just, I got to run it through the equalizer or the processor to try to clean it up a little bit. But when I got the last mic, it wasn't a headset anymore. I'd been on a headset. And so I had to actually have proper posture doing podcasts, where before I could just put the headset on and lean back like you're talking about. And so I've had to sit proper for a while on my podcast, but even more so when I'm on cam now. But anyway, we don't want to drive people away by talking about too much sidebar stuff here. Although we will do some sidebar stuff as the show goes on here and there. That's part of the fun, but in small doses. So we had some comments in the comment area on MJF. And so let's bring A. Milano up. MJF's entire character now is I'm going to show you why I didn't go to WWE. How do you feel about that characterization?
I don't know. I don't think it's inaccurate completely by any means, because he is motivated and certainly on, not literally on Team AEW, but his character is, and he obviously is. So I think from the perspective is he feels like he wants to prove that he can excel here in AEW and that he can be the lead dog. I would go along with that. So I think there's something to that. I certainly am very pleased he didn't go to WWE myself. I think maybe, sometimes he doesn't always use his freedom completely wisely, but I think he's somebody you want to give a lot of freedom to. And WWE's gotten a lot better about that, I recognize. But that's something that I enjoy, and a little bit of unpredictability is something I like in my wrestling. So I appreciate that. Yeah.
I want to, you're talking about freedom in AEW, and I want to give a quick plug here to our Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast feed and our Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post-show feed. One of the reasons is this week we put up part 1 and part 2 is going up soon. The John Moxley interview from 5 years ago this week that I conducted with him. 2.5 hours. He did a long interview with Chris Jericho before his AEW debut. Then he did a long one with me right after his AEW debut. And it's fascinating. It's must listen. If you heard it 5 years ago, I encourage you to re-listen to it. I've been doing that. If you haven't heard it yet, it's not on the YouTube channel. So just search Wade Keller in your podcast app, whether it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, Android app, whatever. We'll turn up. The Blue Logo show has our best of interviews along with our flagship, which again is not YouTube. That's podcast exclusive right now with Rich Fan from yesterday. But on that blue feed is the Moxley interview. And he talked about the freedom he expected to have and was anticipating having in AEW. And that was one of the topics that we got into. So when you brought that up, I was like, oh, I need to plug that. Also, just encourage everybody who finds us on YouTube here on our post shows. We have exclusive content on our podcast feed. On the Red Logo show, the post show, also including some flashback shows. So if you are in a point where you'd rather listen to us than watch us on YouTube, it's good to have that feed on your podcast app. Subscribe, and then you have a choice if you want to listen to us on a podcast or if you want to watch us on YouTube. Both options are out there. So with that plug out of the way, let's go back to the MJF comments here. And let's see, there's another one I wanted to pull up. This from BB, who says MJF's promo means the Adam Cole storyline is dead. I'm so confused by that. Yeah. I mean, I hope they revisit it, But I have some mixed feelings, Dan, because it was awful. And I don't know, sometimes there's the sunk cost, you talk about the sunk cost
We talk about
fallacy.
sunk cost all the time in economics.
Yes.
I walked out of the Blue Man Group because I didn't like it. I didn't care. I paid $120 a ticket.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
and that thing is that was not building MJF up. And so if they have to go one way or the other as terms of too much continuity because it was a bad story to him or not enough continuity, in this case, I'm going to vote for not enough continuity. And I think they have dropped it for now. And again, though, the Joe thing I think has legs still. And I just wish he would have thrown something out there about Joe. They don't need to be doing it right now, but those are the kind of things you like to see hanging out there. And then eventually you come back to it. And I think there is something there.
My issue with that point on Joe, my only pushback would be he's a babyface mentoring Hook. I don't think he's going to face MJF. And I understand, it seemed to me that MJF's decision was, I'm going to talk about 3 top people, 2 who arrived and 1 who became champion while I've been gone. And I don't think he wanted to do talk about everybody. So if he brings up Joe, I think it raises some expectations that we might get Joe in a match with MJF. And I think because he's a babyface now, he's mentoring Hook, and he's not likely to face MJF anytime soon. I'm okay with him not bringing him up. I think the Adam Cole one feels more kind of weird to not address and finish that off. But my hunch is we'll get like a Collision MJF Cole match in like July. That's just going to be a blow off, or in September where they revisit it and want to pop a rating. It's sort of like it's there. It's in the closet. You can go and grab it and take the lid off, and boom, you've got a ready-made match with a backstory when Cole is back. But I'm with you. You and I are sharing this thought. It's too soon. It'll bring people want the kangaroo kick or something awful, and it'll derail his reset, his reboot.
Yeah, I mean, he kicked him low, so he got a little revenge, and I would let it slide from there for now. In terms of Joe, my only counter to that is MJF's pretty much the king of the quick snide side comments. That's all I wanted, because I think eventually MJF's going to be world champion. They can come back around, and you like to let those things percolate. I realize it's going to be a long time before it comes back, but it is a natural thing to come back to. So it's a minor quibble.
Yeah. Zach Barber says MJF put Roosh over better than Roosh has ever been put over in AEW. Eric Crow messaged me and said, we can look at this MJF promo 2 different ways. And one of the negative was burying a lot of people. And the fact that he is facing Roosh, he's likely going to beat Roosh. So you want to make it seem like you're beating somebody who's good. And he even said, some might say you're a Nepo baby, but I don't see you that way. And so to me, that was a good, because Roosh is not a top star. He's not a top guy in the mic. MJF going, I didn't catch any of that. Did any of you? I mean, that was great after Roosh. I did a pretty good job with English as a second language, cutting a promo. He's a little too proud of when you mess with the bull, you get the horns. I think he's like, a little too excited about that every time he says it, which feels a little like uncool or undignified, whatever. But overall, yeah, I mean, he put him over. And you want to do that to your opponent you're facing. You want to beat somebody who's good.
It's the appropriate mix of being, hopefully, the smart ass, making those little snide comments, and then also building the guy up. And I want to bring this up because I want to be the first to say it. I mentioned this to Todd. Ray Phoenix was on the show tonight. CMLL guys were on the show tonight. We may have some expanded possibilities for Forbidden Door that weren't out there a while ago because, I mean, unless I'm mistaken, a month ago, Ray Phoenix could not be on the same show with CMLL guys. So, so I think that's something that, you probably want to make some calls and figure out, but it seems pretty obvious that maybe some of these things that have been not allowed in the past will be allowed, and hopefully for Forbidden Door.
What did you make of MJF saying, I'm going to be on Forbidden Door in Long Island? Again, it's probably some random Mexican or Japanese guy, but order it anyway. that hit a little close to home because, I mean, I would say the 8-man tag tonight felt like, some people would characterize it as, yeah, it's Blackpool Combat Club against 4 Mexican guys because there's a novelty in seeing it. People are into the Mexican Japanese scene, certainly love this stuff. Forbidden Door was a pay-per-view meant to super serve and cater to them, but MJF sort of saying the kind of quiet part out loud about AEW, which is sometimes they do throw random people out there because the hardcore fans who study and follow international wrestlers see it as a dream match. But for a big part of the audience, it's not. I mean, the big drop in Dynamite ratings correlated with the push for ROH, CM Punk's injury, but also the Forbidden Door hype when they shifted to non-personal feuds and they went into the dream match stuff. So I think MJF, like, I give him some points for saying that, but it's also one of those things where how many people at home are going, yeah, I'm not sure about this Forbidden Door thing if it is just going to be a bunch of dream matches that aren't dream matches to me. I'll skip and wait for the next one. So I don't even know what to make of that, but it's something MJF can't help but say in sort of almost a self-deprecating way, which is ordered even though I'll be against some random guy.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's a big niche audience, but there's a niche audience for that show. So I don't, I just realized I'm going to be on a plane during that show, or otherwise I would certainly watch it. As you recall, last year I went to a movie theater in Las Vegas to watch the show, and the feed cut off 5 minutes before the end of the show. I'm still bitter about that. But I think it's okay because I think the people that are going to want to watch it are going to, and the people that are nodding along with his comment are probably not going to get the show anyway. Although Swerve and Ospreay is pretty compelling, so maybe there will be more buys.
Yeah, it is compelling. We'll get into that aspect of things in a bit. BJF says MJF promo started odd. He criticized the physique of a guy in great shape, and then the public speaking skills of a guy with great promo skills like Swerve. We didn't talk much about the Swerve aspect. I mean, we did a little bit, but I like that MJF came out firing against Swerve to a degree. Swerve, I think, is he's not Teflon, but he's cool enough. I mean, I don't think Swerve's going backstage, oh, we can't have MJF picking on me. That's going to hurt my fan base. Like, Swerve's got confidence. He's going to be able to. And then Swerve later in the show, and I thought it was great, before talking about Strong, he said, oh, MJF dropping my name. Well, I'll pay him back when I see him in person on my clock or whatever. But he didn't try to, like, fire back insults. He didn't seem worked up about it. It was sort of like, yeah, that's what MJF does, but I don't feel the need to, like, act defensive and offended. I thought it was good he addressed it, Dan, but important that he didn't seem like, oh, I got to beat him at his own game.
Yeah, and I'm paying attention to the chat as much as I can, and then I don't
ignore them. They're hoodlums.
Well, I do lose focus if I do too much of that. But I saw someone being critical of Swerve's portrayal, and I do not agree with that. I think Swerve is really coming across kind of, I don't want to say above it all in a bad way, but kind of above it all in a good way. Like, his portrayal is really, he's the show closing main event against a great wrestler as the world champion. I loved him dancing with grandma at the end of the show. I just thought, like, that, like, he's the cool guy that if you want to show that everybody's with Swerve, maybe she was a plant. Like, she had AEW stuff all over her, so who knows? But if she was a plant, bravo. Like, that's okay. They used to plant people at center stage in Atlanta. They used to plant people to say they were in love with Hulk Hogan 30 years ago too, or 40 years ago. I just think that he's coming across as somewhat bulletproof. Like, it would be wrong for MJF not to address Swerve. I didn't think the things he said were overly make Swerve uncool, and Swerve acted like, okay, I'll get you, man. I'm in control. I'm cool. I'm confident. I thought this was a good. I think Swerve's done really well lately in a lot of ways.
What do you think I mean, I'm sort of obvious what I'm saying, but I don't know how else to phrase it. What do you think he meant when he said that Swerve is a business mogul, but they tend to go to school, but you must have skipped your public speaking course? Like, where is Swerve? I guess it's just because Swerve isn't known as like an A+ promo. I mean, I don't think people. So I mean, I thought Swerve was a little shaky at the beginning when he started getting more mic time. There was a contract signing or something where it's like, okay, not great, but I mean, it's not. It's nobody's talking about Swerve's promo skills being below par, and so. I mean, in a way, it's a compliment to Swerve that's the best MJF could do is some sort of semi-outdated, never super applicable insult at his public speaking skills.
You got me. I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing is like MJF says things so quickly that some of them register and some of them don't, and you just kind of
Yeah, that was rapid
the
fire
ones that
too.
don't, you just kind
Yeah.
of let it go. Like yeah, I mean, I don't know if I don't think it's dialect really. I don't know. Like I didn't quite, but I just thought he did want to take a shot at Swerve. That one wasn't his biggest hit, but
Mm-hmm.
he's
Yeah.
saying these are the important people, and I'm going to call them all out somehow. And so maybe by design, he was a little bit lame with his criticism of Swerve because they're in the Swerve business right now, and I think for good reason.
Most people listening to us, although we've had a good turnout here for our Dynamite Live YouTube cast here, but most people are going to be listening to us audio only. I'm going to read a couple comments and people responding as our conversation here, and we'll put them on the screen for our YouTube viewers too. Adam Kidd said it was a standard MJF promo, looks the part and great on the mic, biggest star they have by far. Ramen Noodle, love the name. Your parents had great taste. Hope you didn't get picked on. Says, felt like literally every MJF promo ever. This is his style. I don't get the disappointment or surprise. Not sure. I'm not sure what the surprise thing meant. But James said, I like the MJF promo because I felt like it had a residual effect on the promo quality of the rest of the show with Mercedes and Swerve. Well, Mercedes was pre-taped. But Swerve was
good. This was the best. This was the best thing she's done outside of in the ring.
Yeah,
by far. And and they showed I don't want to get off track, but they showed the video of the earlier match, which we said they probably should have done more with Willow. They told the story. She was focused on a sporting aspect and not catchphrases and gaga. And it was really good. I was like, yes, that's praiseworthy. So yeah, I mean, it was a typical MJF promo, maybe with a little more energy. And that by definition is fantastic. So I mean, again, there are nits to pick, but I'll go back to my earlier comments and say I thought it got the show off to a great start overall.
Yeah. I'll read another comment here from Skates, Scott in quotes. For the first time in a while, I watched Dynamite for 2 weeks in a row, and it's for one reason, MJF. Will Ospreay's great, but I personally believe that the world title needs to be on MJF again. Dan, how do you feel about that? When MJF came out, the cry on the graphics said he's the longest reigning AEW World Champion of all. He didn't come back and say, he talked about being the best, but he didn't say it's only a matter of time before I'm world champion. That's not the zone he's going to probably be playing in right away. How do you feel about that? Obviously things have changed with Okada and Ospreay. Swerve as champion. Joe moved to a different role as a babyface with Hook. Obviously Hangman out, Jericho out, Moxley doing other things. So all the ex-world champions aren't really in the mix. You don't have to be in the mix, but with MJF, if you're gonna talk about being the top guy, which he does very effectively, and I think for a lot of people convincingly, is it going to be weird if he's not kind of talking about wanting the world title and maybe coming up with a reason he's not going after it right away, but address that it is just a matter of time? Does he need to do that? Because as Scott said, he thinks the world title needs to be on MJF again. And I had a conversation with Rich Fan on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast flagship yesterday, and went back and forth on Ospreay versus MJF and the tough choice. I think my unfair question to Rich, I like doing unfair questions now and then, was if you could only keep one of the two for budget reasons or something bad is going to happen and you could only save one of them from a piano falling, who would you save in order to feature on AEW? I chose Ospreay, but it was difficult, and Rich chose MJF. So your thoughts on the world title and MJF situation?
Again, I think he addressed Swerve. He's addressing the world champion. So it would be difficult to conclude from that he's not interested in the world title. I know he didn't give a big mission statement, but this is his welcome back promo. He got interrupted by Rouge. Like the kayfabe story is he was going to get there. Like, you know, he would have talked about the world title. He got interrupted by Rush. He didn't know he was going to get interrupted. So that's my short answer. And I think they want to keep him separate from that for a while. And I would do that. I think you don't get a lot of opportunities. And I assume this is still where it's going to end up. Who knows? But you have an opportunity to put your world title on Will Ospreay in front of 60,000 British people and friends of the British that are in Britain. He's been so amazing. That's the route you go, and then eventually you can get to him and MJF, or there's all sorts of options, that many of which you mentioned. So that's where I am on that situation. I think that you don't want to make him seem disinterested in the world title, but I assume he's going to get in a personal situation relatively quickly that maybe distracts him from the world title, and then that makes it more plausible.
Yeah, and I think you have a really good point. Like, if this were real, he got interrupted by Rush before he got to everything he was going to say. So, you know, I mean, it's not like he goes, and that's all I have to say, and he didn't bring up the world title. He got interrupted before he could maybe get to all his talking points. I like that attention to detail if that was part of it. Like, he could even in a week or two just go, hey, Rush interrupted me a couple weeks ago. I was about to say a couple other things. Let me get back to, I mean, maybe that's a little too tidying things up, but he can get around to it. Keith Beardy says the problem with MJF is that you can tell he absolutely reveres WWE. Everything he says and doesn't say is a living tribute to them. I believe he appreciates AEW, but WWE is his dream job. MJF's basically said WWE is his dream job, but, you know, and I'm obviously, nobody in this business isn't going to look at what WWE is doing internationally with WrestleMania, with SummerSlam stadium shows, and not fantasize a little bit, if you believe in yourself, that, you know, how am I going to be looked at if I don't play in that field someday? That said, MJF could have gone to WWE. I mean, he might have had to take less money. He might have had to prove himself. There's no guarantee that Paul Levesque would appreciate him the way that Tony Khan does, or give him the freedom he has. And I think Tony Khan paid MJF enough money for a very light schedule in the ring. We'll see. I mean, I think it's encouraging that Rush is calling him out, but I'd like to see MJF wrestle more. That's a topic, reason people can disagree on. You know, the scarcity issue, as you know, as an economic professor, adds value to things, and MJF has taken advantage of that for better or for worse, and it's a mix. So, anyway, your thoughts on that aspect of things?
I think he certainly would like to be in WWE someday, and I think he knows he's a young man. I mean, his value is just going to continue to increase the longer he stays in AEW to WWE, I believe. And I think a little bit of that is a work, frankly. Like, I don't buy that he.
Yeah, when he was a heel, he was trying to get heel heat with AEW fans by saying I love WWE, and you're right but it doesn't mean at the core there isn't some truth to it. But you're right, he amplified it for the character.
I think it's amplified. I don't dispute the poster's point, but I think you want to understand that part of that is a way to get people interested in him, whether that's WWE people that like him a little more, or the AEW big time, you know, Homer fans that resent it a little bit if they take it too seriously. So I think again, you have to look at it like, what is it beneficial for him to act this way in terms of the interest in his character? And I think the answer to that is yes. So you know, I think he's very thoughtful about everything he does, and I think he's going to be a really great contributor to AEW for quite a long time.
Yeah. So yeah, a couple comments and we'll move on from MJF. Ramen Noodle says, didn't he just re-sign? What's the rush? AEW is very top heavy. I like MJF cooking with Rush level guys and solidifying the mid card a bit. And Azan White says he's playing the long game. Yep. So, okay. Well, we spent 35 minutes on MJF. If people want to keep commenting on MJF or have any follow-up, especially if you're joining us in progress, that works for me. Scott from Tampa VIP member says, are we headed for a Swerve Ospreay MJF 3-way at All In? God, I hope not. One-on-one matches belong in main events. 3-ways are for off-month pay-per-views.
I certainly hope not, and I don't think so.
Yeah, well, seed has been planted. A box of chocolates and zombies says MJF was on the Rosie show when he was a kid. He loved the WWE and stated his dream was to become a WWE star. You never forget your childhood dream. Yeah, I mean, no, I mean, it's a embarrassment of riches for MJF. He's got a multi-million-dollar contract, multi-year with AEW. He's got creative freedom, maybe a light schedule if he demanded it, and Tony didn't play hardball. But obviously he's super talented and he could have gone to WWE, but he's a big fish in a smaller pond, and can rub people the wrong way. And I think MJF is cognizant of that. So if he went to WWE, he might have had some concern that maybe my act won't play well there and they'll take something away from me that at the core is who I need to be as a pro wrestler. So let me stay in AEW. Maybe someday he'll talk about it in a forthright way.
And let me just say, like, I heard him a long time ago when he was just up and coming on the Jericho podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And he said his dream was to be a pro wrestler. 20 years ago, if your dream was to be a pro wrestler, you had to say WWE because it was the only game in town.
Yep.
So again, okay, but I think he's living a pretty good facsimile of his dream if it's not his actual dream. I'll say that.
Yes, although they were in front of about 2,500 people tonight. I mean, it's not for your return promo. You're in a smaller town in Colorado in front of
Well,
2,500
Loveland
people.
is really close to Denver, actually.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah, so that actually makes it worse. But
in a way,
I've been by that arena. I mean, you're driving in Denver. You're going out to. I go to Red Rocks, as you know, every summer to watch the Avett Brothers several times, and that is in the middle of things. I don't know exactly where it is, but I think my buddy might have used to live in Loveland, so it's a very close suburb to the rest of Denver.
We are getting emails pouring in, and if you want to join in, it's your chance to expand a little bit more than in the chat room and also not be pushed off the chat room. People have asked about super chats. It's the thing to do. We'll probably be getting into that as we grow because it is hard to keep up, as Dan is finding out on all the chats going on. And so we'll probably need to activate super chats at some point, but it's manageable now. And we're just starting off on YouTube. We just want to be, listener viewer friendly at the beginning here as much as we can, but email is the way to be able to elaborate more without a limit, although limit yourself, but without a small character limit. And we'll be looking in that mailbag later. The address is on the screen, Wade Keller Podcast at gmail.com. That's the way to follow up on what we're saying live on the show too. But like I said, you don't have to worry about the chat just scrolling off the screen and us not addressing it or forgetting to. So I do recommend that as another option for you if that works for you. I do want to plug the PWT Talks NXT crew on camera last night. We had Doc Bruce Hazelwood on with Kelly Wells, both making their on-camera debuts with Nate Lindbergh. So I encourage you to check that out. They did big viewership numbers on the show last night. They did 768,000, up from 703, 654, and 567 the previous 3 weeks. They are on the march upward in terms of viewership. Their demo number went from 0.18 and 0.17 to 0.24 and 0.22 the last 2 weeks. So some momentum there. I encourage you to check out the PWT Talks NXT show. That is available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/PWTorch. You can also subscribe and listen to that along with all 7 shows each week on the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. Different hosts, different theme and focus to each of the shows each day of the week. Search PWTorch in your podcast app, and you can download and listen to the NXT crew talk. Kelly Wells talked about why he was shirtless when Nate entered the room before they went live. And we had someone accused of what was the term? Something about vaping. I don't know. It got crazy. So it's worth checking out. But they know NXT well. It's a really smart but fun conversation with those guys, and it's worth checking out. And if you've not been watching NXT, their show is a good way to kind of get you into it. I mean, their knowledge and discussion is top shelf. So I encourage everybody to check them out either here on youtube.com/PWTorch or searching PWTorch in your podcast app and subscribing. Dan, you are a new face for our YouTube audience. You're a familiar voice on our Wade Keller Pro Wrestling post shows on the podcast side of things. Give people a pithy just overview of where you come from as a fan, and you've contributed to the Torch. You've done New Japan reports. You've been part of a lot of podcasts, but people might not know much about you, so let them know what you're about.
Yeah, someone just put up on every so often on Twitter or X, you'll see the the famous angle where Eddie Gilbert tricks Bill Watts into coming into the ring, and he forgives, or Eddie asks for forgiveness about employing one of the worst Russians ever in wrestling, Korsita Korchenko, and then he and the Koloffs and Sting and what would have been the Ultimate Warrior eventually jumped Bill Watts. But the reason I bring that up is that was my first wrestling show, May 1986 in Springfield, Missouri. We went to see Bill Watts and Hacksaw Duggan and Dr. Death and Ted DiBiase get revenge on the Russians and Eddie Gilbert. And my wrestling fandom, I guess, goes a little bit further back than that. We probably started watching world-class wrestling in about 83, 84. I've had my moments where I follow the genre less than I do today, but I've been a pretty continuous fan since the mid-'80s. And I've been a subscriber to the Torch since 96, I believe, and really enjoy that content. And, I've met a lot of great people through the Torch. I've had great opportunities to go up to Waterloo, Iowa at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame, which I would recommend again this year. It is right toward the end of July. I'll look up the exact dates momentarily. I think it's about July 20th, that weekend. They have, Arn Anderson's going to be there this year, Tony Schiavone, and a number of the Baron Von Raschke's and the legends that always go there. And I've met Wade at that event, and we hit it off there. And hopefully I do okay in terms of contributing when we talk G1 or we talk.
Usually not always.
Okay. All right.
No,
well,
I'm joking. No,
but
you're
yeah,
great. You're great.
we get a chance to talk New Japan. We get a chance to talk AEW, and that's probably where my primary focus is. Like everybody else, I have limited time, and I don't know how anybody watches 12 or 13 hours of wrestling a week, but I pretty religiously watch AEW. I do keep up with New Japan, and I'll catch a little bit of WWE here and there. So that's probably the most honest wrestling fandom I could give.
Awesome. Cool. Let's continue our conversation here and move to what do you want our B topic to be, Dan, here on that we talk about from tonight's show? What else stood out that you got?
So I knew you always come up with a theme or something, and sometimes you really catch me off guard. I kind of expected MJF to be the opening topic tonight.
Yeah.
I think one of the themes that I would want to make sure we stress about this show is there was a little more uncertainty of outcome in some of the matches, and it made for a more enjoyable show. I that first match, I wanted Rey Fenix to win. I wanted them to build with a match with he and Will Ospreay, but I wasn't certain that was the route they were going to go. And it gets me more excited about watching the follow-up that he earned that match. It wasn't just given to him as we had with Roderick Strong, although they performed really well in the match. I thought Mark Briscoe would beat Brian Cage, but I wasn't 100% sure. I thought you might as well shut down the ROH title if he loses this match. But that was good, and there were they seem to make a lot of good use of their time. There was a little bit of repetitiveness of some of the annoying characters that were, there were a lot of people kind of mimicking Jericho's sing-songy stuff, and maybe they did that a little too much. But most of the segments were really good. You mentioned the Danielson promo was fantastic. The Mercedes promo, I would say, was fantastic. And so I thought they did a lot of things well tonight. It was a pretty easy watch. It wasn't something that was difficult to watch.
What did I call it? The pizzazz. Early in AEW, they lacked pizzazz. They lacked elbow grease. Those little things that you weave into the show to elevate it beyond pointing the camera at the ring and just filming moves. And they had that. The Roderick Strong video of him running up.
That was really
mountain. Yeah. I mean, it was good, and Mercedes, they put her, the whole point with people who can't do what MJF does is to put them in a position to win. And they put her in a position to win. My I don't even know if it's a critique, but coming out of it, I was like, okay, that's good. That's encouraging. She can do that. I don't like, but it's, it is part of AEW's DNA. Another belt being an issue. Somebody in the chat room had mentioned, I don't want to see, I was disappointed seeing that, we're incorporating another belt. Belt collecting seems to be a phrase that wrestlers in AEW talk about with pride. And I think it's code for, I'm not interested in drawing money. when they say that, because by addressing other belts, you're watering down the value of your own. You're overestimating the value your audience on TBS and TNT have in it. You're just living in a kind of a Twitter bubble at that point, and not even like all of Twitter. So, building her match around, I want another belt, not a fan of. And I also didn't know, and this is more of a curiosity than a criticism, is she a babyface or a heel? Because it felt like she was babyface this week. And I had reached out to people in AEW last week. I said I would. I asked Tony Khan. He didn't tell me, by the way. I asked others in AEW what they thought. And every person said, I don't know, in some form or fashion. They just don't know. And I just think you should have a strong emotional investment in somebody winning or losing. Like, my phrase of the month or last month or so has been, the definition of babyface is not how they talk. Do they talk pure? Do they swear? Are they violent or a scientific wrestler, as they used to say in the 70s and 80s? It's, is their heart in the right place? Is their heart in the right place? No matter who they are, be themselves, they're authentic. And I just still don't know with Mercedes where her heart lies. Is she living on past fame, wearing the letter jacket to high school 15 years later about the whole Divas revolution, and she's never going to stop talking about that? Is she going to say money changes everything and come across as like super materialistic, trying to redo Conor McGregor in some way, or Money Mayweather? But it feels a little derivative and not in the realm of wrestling, a really good fit for feuding with heels if you're coming across that way. So I don't know what her character is still, even after watching that. So to me, this is a foundation to build on, a step in the right direction, mostly positive, not for belt collecting but that's a loose end that she wants to talk about. It's not, at least, out of nowhere. But what about that, Dan, in terms of, she comes across as a star, and I give her credit for looking like a star and acting like a star and really raising the game of everybody in AEW to look the part of a big star. She's bringing that, and she's great in the ring still. I still don't get her character, though.
Yeah, I think the focus for her was on, I was supposed to, and not saying it even in a non-kayfabe way, I was supposed to win this belt. And I got in this match, and this Stephanie was pretty fantastic. And then obviously I lost, and now I've avenged that loss. And now I want to get the belt I should have had. I agree with your larger point, like, to the nth degree. I mean, I see those guys with the ROH tag titles. I'm like, these are pointless. I'm glad at least they aren't using the ROH title as a reason not to put Mark Briscoe on the show, but it's what it is. But yeah, at least if they can keep them together, I guess. I mean, that's a belt that does have a meaning to some degree outside of AEW. So I don't know why she needs to go after it, but it's a minor thing to me. I guess I do at least see the point that she really wanted to win that belt. She didn't do it. Now she's trying to make it right.
Yeah.
It's the best I can do.
Yeah. Yep. Somebody actually says, an aside, Labor 88 in the chat room, what were the ticket sales for Dynamite WrestleTix? I recommend supporting them on Patreon, by the way. Just enter WrestleTix. They do great work. They sent out a email mid-afternoon today, and there were about 2,500 tickets distributed. Current setup was for 3,000 in this venue, and it didn't jump out to me watching the show.
No, I was going to say, I thought they made it look good. I thought
they did a nice job.
Good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they're getting a lot of practice at making small crowds look good, but they are getting better at it. And that's just the reality of what they're dealing with right now. If they stopped having wrestlers talk about being belt collectors and had clearly defined baby faces and heels with less predictable outcomes on TV, they might start selling more tickets. But hopefully MJF returning and whatever. I don't want to do big topic discussions here. Unpredictable finishes. You mentioned that. I mean, did it bother you that Roderick Strong got a title shot? And obviously nobody watching thinks Strong's going to win the world title. Should this have been an eliminator match or a non-title match or a grudge match? Should the Bucks or Tony Khan or Christopher Daniels stepped in and said, hey, world title shots, you've got to win a tournament. You have to build up a stronger record. Should that have been there? I will throw, before I throw to you, Dan, I will throw in, Excalibur said Roderick Strong, it was like mid-match, but Roderick Strong is 9-1 this year. And then he listed 2 mid-carders he beat, which wasn't super great details, but I don't want to left that out. Just the 9-1 sounded better than the two people he named that he beat. But nevertheless, how do you feel about Strong getting an actual world title shot, especially when Danielson's talking about wanting to win a tournament and Ospreay had to win a big match to get it, and Strong just sort of gets handed one?
And you're going to have to remind me of this, but it seems like Tony Khan gave it to him just when he asked for it. Like,
Yeah.
I would be much better with it if they said, no, it's going to be an eliminator or something like that. And then Swerve said, you know what? I want to put the title on the line. This guy's done well enough. He has the record that I think he's worthy of a title shot. And it was good. He didn't complain about that. Like he was welcoming the challenge. But I think if it would have been initiated by Swerve, it would have been a lot easier to take from a storyline perspective. So I would have, that would have been the way I would have gone with it. I mean, they're trying to build, more intrigue and hold a rating with the match. And I guess they figure putting the title up can help with the margin to some degree. But yeah, there wasn't exactly any uncertainty about the match. And I don't care for this whole, so if I'm the coach at the basketball game and I run out on the court and try and distract somebody, but I don't actually hit them physically, they're not going to call a technical on me. I mean, I didn't like that Excalibur's excuse. Well, Taven, I think it was Taven. Taven didn't hit him. He just distracted him. It's like, come on. They make
it makes Swerve look bad. Like, God, Swerve was distracted and Taven didn't even touch him. Like, it actually, in a way, made Swerve look worse.
Well,
like that.
The dominant thing to do, and I've said this, we have some coaches in basketball that get on the court too much, just go plow into them. Then okay, maybe they threaten to disqualify Roddy, and he can say, "Well, I don't want to win like that, but throw him to the back because I want to wrestle and not be." But it's just it's a lack of logic that is bothersome, that is too frequent in AEW.
Yeah, I thought when Swerve was playing to the crowd for Whose House Swerve's House as he was setting up his finisher, all I was thinking is, I hope he hits his finisher, because babyfaces should not be playing to the crowd and giving the heel time to recover and having that backfire on them, and it did. James Storm and Robert Roode were the worst at this. They would do beer money, and they were babyfaces, and they would do that, and like 4 to 5 times their opponents recovered and like cut off their momentum. And so don't be the babyface who plays to the crowd and then it backfires. You're trying to win a match, not win a cheerleading contest. You can get the crowd into your match afterwards, or book it. Like, if you play to the crowd while the wrestler's outside the ring and the ref's counting them out, obviously totally fine. That makes sense. You got to occupy yourself with the rest counting to 10. But don't book, well, I need an excuse for the heel to make a comeback, so let me show a complete lack of discipline and come across as a big mark who just needs affirmation with cheers, like some sort of political pep rally in the middle of a world title defense. So I mean, it's not just Swerve who does it. It's just a thing they do. It's as dumb as the heel, as we saw tonight on Dynamite, attacking a babyface before the match, and then the ref goes, "Oh, well, let's reward this illegal attack by calling for the bell right away." WWE's figured this out. WWE's cleaned up all these irritants, or so many of them. People who don't watch WWE don't realize the things that bugged them 8 years ago. WWE's not doing 9 out of 10 of them anymore. Paul Levesque has cleaned that up. They always have the referee check with the wrestler who got attacked and say, "Are you good to go? Are you sure?" And then they call for the bell at that point. So there's all kinds of like logic gaps with AEW that are obnoxious. But Swerve at least won like 8 seconds later. So
it was an appropriate level of a clean finish too. Like, that's not always the end of the world to not have just 800 interference spots and all this. I mean, like, it was a clean win, so that's good against a credible guy, as someone's brought up in the chat. I mean, Roddy had lost to Ospreay, but before that he'd done really well, even if he hadn't beaten too many top names. So and it was going to be a good match, and okay, maybe they overemphasize that, but there is a part of the audience that's more inclined to stay tuned to watch the world champion in a good match. So
yep I appreciate, by the way, I'm noticing you guys just complimenting us being on YouTube. A bunch of you are doing that, and I appreciate you taking the time to do that. And we are happy that we are here. It even, I think, has improved the sound quality of our podcast. We do miss having callers, and we're still working on different ways to work that into the show. I am kind of doing a soft launch of our VIP member invite. I do put it in my TV report if you're a VIP member listening to this or watching this, and you are going to watch the live post shows after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, I put a code just on the VIP site for VIP members right now where you can join the show like Sean from Murfreesboro will be doing momentarily here and join us. And that is just a VIP member perk. And if you want to take advantage of that, you have to do it while we're live, of course. But just click on that link and you can end up in the waiting room and be brought onto the show. So that's at PWTorchVIP.com, our ad-free VIP website. And I am including that, I think, at the top and bottom of my TV report. So look for it there if you're interested in doing what Sean from Murfreesboro is about to do. So let's bring Sean into the
You need to pay attention to Scott's comment first. Sorry, go ahead.
You're talking about the Jericho thing?
And it's okay. It was praising.
Oh, okay.
It's just,
gotcha. Sorry. Okay. I as a policy was not. I'm like way behind on comments.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Cool. I'll find it and I'll decide if it's worth featuring.
I think I killed my chances. What's up, Sean?
What's up, Sean?
How's it going, guys? This is my first Dynamite watching it live in a long time.
Fun.
So
okay.
I'm thankful to be able to talk. Dan, it's always fun listening to you, man, on here, and it's good to get to see you in person talking to you. How are you, man?
I'm doing really well. Really excited studying college football today and getting excited about that. And I head to the World Series of Poker in 2 weeks, so I'm trying to work on that. And life's pretty good.
Hey, Dan, this is a total like nitpick thing. Jericho would scold you for this, but since we're on a triple person screen here, can you back up a little so we're not cutting off like a third of your face? Okay, cool. I don't know. I'm just
Jericho be like, a computer back. I don't know. Okay.
We're good. No, I'm like watching him like, oh, he's like slowly like leaving the screen as he's talking. I'm like, we want to see all of Dan's facial expressions here as he reacts to Sean. Anyway, Sean, if you could, we could actually handle you, like tilt your camera down a little bit so we saw a little more of you and a little less of your feeling. Look at me. I'm Jericho's teaching people how to scoop food on the plate, and I'm directing. Oh, Jericho was directing camera shots too. Anyway,
I'll just go like this. I'll just do this.
Look at how symmetrical we are now. This is pleasing the OCD in me. Go ahead, Sean. I'm done.
So, I wanted to first say, Dan, I enjoy you. I knew who was winning the Rey Fenix match. I knew he was winning that from the very moment it started. Because, honestly, I mean, Cassidy was already the international champion, so he's not winning. Kyle O'Reilly just lost to Ospreay, so he sure the heck ain't winning. Lethal sure the heck ain't winning.
I thought maybe you just, with Orange Cassidy, and maybe I didn't think about it enough, I'm like, he could always win. That was my other contender, and it does seem odd, but, what he's doing, you just never know because – all the stuff he's doing with, his former partners and stuff, maybe it gives them a chance to advance that story. So I hoped it was Phoenix, but I thought it might be Orange. I didn't really consider it was a little unusual for now I have to get my notes because I'm further away from him, for O'Reilly to be right back in the mix. But okay. I mean, it worked.
It did. And it was fine because I'm a fan of Rey Fenix, and I think him against Will will be a really fun match. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So I was excited there. Well, here's a thing that you guys haven't talked about that I actually wanted to bring up because you were talking about video packages and good video packages with the strong video package. Yeah, it was good. I just, again, he knew it wasn't winning. So for me, it was like, I'm not investing in him because he's not winning. One video package that really intrigued me was the Danny Garcia video package. It was really, really good. But the video, I didn't know about his story, so that was really cool. Like, I wish they would have shown this 3 years ago, because he was on a great track, and then he just lost it. They didn't turn him face when they should have, and then he turned back with Jericho, and it's just he's lost a lot, and I think he could be repackaged. And maybe is this the way they do it? Can they go somewhere with this now? Because this was a good start. I just wish they would have done it again 3 years ago.
I think they captured what Danny Garcia's potential character is. I mean, he is a guy who in his teenage years decided, I want to be a wrestler. He traveled long distances for no money. I think he can be the type of wrestler that fans watching live vicariously through. Because he just seems like this genuinely nice guy. Even when he's trying to not be nice, you just know he would be like standing around. And I don't know this for a fact, but he comes across as the guy who'd be standing around signing every autograph for everybody, because he just loves wrestling. And there's room for that. It doesn't feel schmaltzy or put on if it comes across as real genuine. And I thought this made him seem really likable. What'd you think, Dan?
I mean, ditto. Yeah, it was short, but
Yep.
very compelling. And the guy's going to go the extra mile to get his training in, and to, that a lot of people, love wrestling, that watch this show, and it's fine for somebody that's living the dream, and that they're where they want to be. There's, again, we had people saying earlier, well, does MJF really want to be here? Are we sure? I mean, it's good to have people that are excited to be in AEW in terms of the storylines of the show, and that they keep gradually kind of getting ahead. And I think he's still got plenty of potential, and again, a compelling character. So that I feel good about where he can go. And they haven't done it with him yet. Obviously, there's been a lot of start and stops, but it can build to something.
He is just so good in the ring too. I mean, he is just, yeah. I mean, yeah, he's just so good in the ring. I mean, they got to figure something out. And the weird dance that Garcia was doing, I didn't think was gonna. I mean, it got him some social media like gifts or something, but that's not trying to become a draw. And wrestlers need to be thinking, and Tony Khan needs to be steering and directing wrestlers into becoming draws. They need to sell tickets and draw people to buy pay-per-views and watch TV, not become, joke GIF subjects. So, by the way, Troy Ayala says, I thought it was going to be Orange 2, Dan. I'm with you, and I'm a Dan stan. You got to stand, Dan.
Oh my
I love it.
Okay, now I'm being honest. I'm trying to find the show on my phone, because now you have me sitting so far back, I can't read the screen. So
you can lean in. I was at least 15% joking when I said that I wanted you to move back. How's that?
Well,
wait, that's not very much. No, I was 85% joking. No, go.
Yeah, if I could find.
I'm blaming Sean.
Phone, I can then. I do like to keep track of some of the comments, and it's kind of a blur. I have never been blessed with good vision, so
you can lean into the. Look at me, I'm leaning in, and I'm
okay. All right.
I didn't mean to throw you off that much. I would rather. Oh no, that's too close. That's scary.
Well, I'll come back when I speak. But anyway, yeah.
I'm just giving you a hard time, Dan. I just couldn't read this.
No,
people
see me. I teach my class, and it's like, oh boy, okay, what are we doing here?
This is every time my son is on a chat with his grandma, my mom's leaning in like that to talk to him on the phone, so that it's a thing I'm used to. Sorry, Dan, we're just here. Let this make you feel better. Professor Dan, this is from VIP member Scott from Tampa. Professor Dan is one of my favorite co-hosts of yours, Wade. So smart and seems like a great guy. There you are.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes. Go ahead and read your chat, Dan. We'll just block you from the screen while you do. Sean, what else have you got for us?
Well, I wanted to say that, well, first, Scott, I want you to be on the, I was going to say, I told you, I said on Monday, for VIP members that are, thank you for the perk, Wade. It's cool to be able to be on the show and just talk with you guys about anything. But I actually talked to Zach Barber, who's in the chat earlier. I said, I'm on Discord with him a lot. I talk to him a lot. I disagree with him a lot, but it's all good fun. I mean, we just enjoy talking wrestling with each other. And I told him, I was like, Zach, you're going to get on the show, man. You email the show all the time. You need to get on the show and talk to us on the show. You need to talk to Wade. Like, you just have to. And he's like, well, I'm eating dinner. Just joking. It was funny. It was really funny. But I hope he gets on, Scott. I hope to hear from you on Friday. It's always fun getting to talk. Going back to the Blackpool Combat Club and the 8-man tag you just were talking about, I'm okay with the CMLL guys like on there. It's hard because they're never going to win. They're just on there and they just lose. And so they try to talk about who they are and they try to define who they are, but like we know they're just going to lose. And that's, to me, it's unfortunate. And going back to the Blackpool Combat Club, one loophole for me was, okay, they brought Yuta back. Like, he just comes back out of nowhere. If you're not on social media, you had no idea he was coming back. Like, no idea, which was a cool moment. But at the same time, Yuta was a flipping heel, guys, like 6 months ago, and now all of a sudden he's just with the Blackpool Combat Club just because their faces now he's just a face out of nowhere. I mean, you got to define that a little bit or tell us what's going on with him and why he all of a sudden just turned out of nowhere and is a face just for no good reason. So I didn't understand that at all. What did you guys think about that part of it?
Yeah, Dan, what do you think?
I think the Blackpool Combat Club is kind of immune from that, to me, from that type of criticism, because they are at their core, they're baby faces, right? I mean, like, really, but then they do some violent stuff that gets them on the heel side of things. And I think that Yuta's wrestling the same way. They all, were willing to be pretty violent, and I could be mistaken, and I realize this wasn't portrayed very well for the American public, but when they wrestled the match in Mexico, didn't the CMLL guys win? I can't recall offhand. And I realize that's not gonna have it's not gonna change the fact that 98% of the people watching on TV are gonna say, oh well, we know who's winning this match. That's not why it was put on there, but that would mitigate that a little bit. And I honestly can't remember, because I know then Danielson won the big singles match, but I was thinking possibly that Team CMLL won the 8-man match they had, and they beat Matt Sydal, I think, actually, which he's not in the BCC, so it's not exactly the most overwhelming victory, but I do think they won the first match, so that's something.
Yeah, it was a match that was not on my list of matches that I didn't know the outcome of. I mean, obviously it was clear who was going to win that one. So it was a lot of action.
The one that, and I'm curious what you guys think. I really thought Mariah May would continue winning. That one, to me, like, I actually saw that going the other way. And I was like, I was like, wow. But they're building something, obviously, a huge story with the Shirakawa and Tony and all that. But yeah, I thought that, and again, it's unpredictable, but I don't really feel like it was just unpredictable just to be unpredictable. So it adds to the intrigue of the show.
Ramen Noodle says, Torch contributors seem to hate predictability, but also hate surprises. I don't get it. So Ramen, there are nuance to our arguments that cannot be boiled down. That is a misrepresentation, as I would accuse Zach in Texas of sometimes doing to me. Hi, Zach. The predictability that we are against, pretty unified against, is having long matches on AWTV dominate the 5 hours of AWTV, where the average viewer is looking at this going, okay, there's a lot of back and forth and near falls, but in the end, I know who's going to win. And there's just too high a ratio of that in AEW. And it wasn't even, the way I cover wrestling, I mean, I've done this 35 plus years now. I mean, I watch wrestling instinctively differently as more of someone analyzing, like, I mean, they co-opted my term. The authority did. I've been saying it for decades. Is it what's going to draw money? Is it going to, what's good for business is kind of how I look. And it took, and this is why I love, having the interaction with listeners, because so many people were saying, wait, AEW is too predictable. I want to watch a show and not know who's going to win all the matches. That's part of my enjoyment of wrestling, is buying into the near falls on both sides of a match. And so that's the predictability part that many people, not just Torch contributors, because I actually wasn't thinking about that until the listeners started bringing it up. And then other analysts and Todd Martin certainly talked about it artfully and eloquently, and very specifically on the Fix VIP podcast on a weekly basis. So, and then the hate surprises part, I'm all for surprises. I'm the one advocating for wrestling companies doing a better job hiding people when they're going to be surprises, and making sure that things are kept secret. And I'm critical of show-off reporting when reporters who have inside contacts just blurt out what's going to happen on a show and take away the surprise factor in order to, boost their insider credentials. I get that's a thing, but it's my thing to be critical of that. I don't like show-off booking. Other people who have inside sources have gotten better about prefacing any spoiler with an alert and a chance to escape it. But it's still up to the wrestlers and the wrestling company to protect their surprises, because it's sometimes hard on social media to not know what's going to happen next. And I do not want to know what's going to happen next. So I like surprises. What I don't like is booking a surprise for the sake of a surprise, or someone had a even better term than we usually use, the kind of fake out turn, where it's like, oh, I'm on your side, and then all of a sudden, no, I'm not. And there's way too much of that. So it's a nuance. Some predictability is good, some is bad, some surprises are good, and some are bad. So I'd say just, the specifics of our arguments are what you should be upset with Ramen, not generalizing in a way that I think doesn't fairly reflect our more nuanced thoughts on those two topics. Dan, anything you want to add to that? You don't have to, but
no, I think you said it pretty well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sean, I'll go back to you. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we continue rolling with the show and others?
Well, you just brought up, and that's what I would say, the Mariah and Saraya match. Well, number one, I'll say, when Saraya came into AEW, I was pumped. I thought, man, they could really do something with Saraya. Now, I was worried about the injury, of course. Like, is she healthy 100%? But I thought they could have done so much with her, and this has just been an awful way of using her. And then tonight, she just gets a win out of nowhere when they're actually doing something with her. Like, they're on a kind of a roll with the story, even though, do I love the story with Tony and Mariah? I mean, it's good. I don't love it just because of the things I've said about Tony for a while. I love her, but I just don't think the character should have a title, in my opinion. But it's fine. They're doing what they're doing. Was this loss for Mariah just to build into the story with her eventually turning on Tony? Is that just all it was, or where do you think that they were going with that going into the match? Because it did throw me out of nowhere. I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, Dan, what do you think?
Again, this gets back to the other comment. I'm not entirely sure where they're going, and that's fine. But people are going to be critical of AEW booking, but I think that this is clearly part of something bigger. Like, Tony Khan is not stupid enough to not realize what he's got with this woman. I mean, she's a real star. She dressed differently tonight. I wonder if there was anything to that. But I figure it's going somewhere, and I'm not exactly sure where, but that's okay. I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt here because there is intrigue, obviously, with the match at Forbidden Door. They'll get through that and then build to eventually. Obviously, I would think her and Tony.
Was this the most Tony Storm has been booked as a babyface in a traditional framing of babyfaces tonight, with what happened post-match and Saraya running away from Mariah May, Tony Storm being herself on commentary? But I mean, this like we're trying to figure out, is Mercedes Moné a babyface or a heel, or trying to just be sort of above that all, is perilous as I think that approach is, or have they decided, yeah, let's let Tony Storm be something fans enjoy her gimmick. Let's let that happen. Boot to the Face on our chat room says, I've never understood the Tony character. I've never understood the argument that Tony shouldn't have a title. I've never understood that argument. She's the most over women's wrestler they have. She puts on great matches. Why shouldn't she have the title? Dan, what do you think about that in terms of, one, my thing about Tony Storm as a babyface, and then also Boot to the Face and saying, she shouldn't have a title. Todd Martin is among those, and he's not alone in making that point, that a number of our emailers and co-hosts have said that too.
I think it's a valid criticism of her being champion if she's going to be overly goofy. You have to pick a lane. Now, the match with Serena Deeb, more of that, and it's fine. And it's not that she can't have a character. It's that if your world champion is not about eventually putting on the best matches you can, I think that's a disservice to a division. So it's getting better, and it's not that I'm opposed to her being the champion. I figured out how to make this a full screen, so now if you put something on the screen, I can read it. So that's good.
I love it.
And you're now.
My dog, my dog just pushed his way into the office, and so I was like, I'll let him make his debut. Took a little cajoling, but now he's curled up on his chair. He's happy. He knows podcasting is not get attention time, but I gave him a little bit there, so he's happy. And Dan, I was partially listening to you, but also saying hi to the
sure.
I haven't seen him in a couple hours here.
Priorities.
Sean, back to you for anything you want to follow up on there.
Well, like I said, I mean, I'm a fan of Toni Storm. I want to put that out there. I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan. I've been a fan when she was in WWE. I've been a fan of her in AEW. I just want a serious champion. I just think it's not as serious as it could be. And if it's more serious, then I'm all for it. Bring it on. Last quick thing. Well, I just wanted to say there was like the Jericho stuff. To me, it's just awful. I'm a Chris Jericho fan. I think he's been great. This stuff is terrible. It's terrible. He doesn't need to talk that loud to do what his shtick. Just talk in a normal freaking voice, dude. We don't need the rah. Thanks, guys. Like it's freaking stupid. Stop, AEW. Stop with this crap. So I want to say that. And going back to the Bucks, I haven't been against what they've been doing, but again, just the stuff with the Acclaimed. Oh, your segment's done. It was okay, and then the Christian stuff. Just I don't know. The Bucks are. I've always been with you, Wade. I think they needed to have some kind of lane or some kind of thing they were trying to accomplish and go for and have some meat behind what they were doing. But like, I just don't know if this is it for me. But I'm willing to let it play out because it's been entertaining to a degree, but it's also been, kind of. So I wanted to hear more about the Bucks, but also Jericho. If you think I'm just way off base, but that's pretty much all I had. Again, thank you for having me on Friday. I want to hear more people. Scott, Zach, one of these days. But Dan, it's fun hearing you, man. It's fun getting to talk to you guys, and I appreciate you taking my call and let me be on.
Thank you.
I invited Eric Kroll to do a run in tonight too. I don't know if he's listening or not, but I thought him and Dan would be fun together. But I don't know if he was able to make that work. But yeah, we'd love to connect faces to some names here and get more more people. Sean, it's great having you on. You're setting the tone. You're giving a good example of what this format can be. And I know a lot of people want callers back. Anybody wants to be on before we work out where we're going to eventually be, because we're only a couple weeks into this. If you want to have callers, you can be one of them, but you got to be a VIP member and you got to click on my TV report. Speaking of which, Dan, I'm going to read, because this is what people love, is when people quote themselves. As far as Jericho goes, I wrote last week after the in-ring segment with Jericho and talk about Brian Keith and then Hook and all that. I said, in a weird genius move by Jericho, the point of this bit is to flop badly and keep smiling and waving at a disinterested audience rejecting him. He's found his sweet spot in 2024, I think. That's a compliment wrapped in several insults. Jericho could take that like, yes, Wade figured out what I'm doing, or how dare Wade say such mean things. But it is genius in a sense that his character is now designed to get the reaction that he was going to get no matter what at this point. And so Jericho's smart, not politically, but otherwise. And I think he kind of figured that out. He's doing a little kind of a combination of like Eugene meets Bray Wyatt in the Firefly Funhouse. I do think, whether no one's admitted this to me, but I do think there's a little bit of mocking CM Punk. I don't know if he's known for being overly friendly to workers when he shows up, but also going, hey, here's a better way to do it. If he gave out uninvited advice constantly, maybe someone will admit to this being inspired partially by him. But Dan, what do you think?
Okay, clearly it's designed to be cringe-inducing, so it works.
So Sean's reaction, you don't want go away heat, but Sean's reaction, Jericho might see as a victory rather than something he needs that's going to make him reconsider his act. He's getting Sean worked up in a way that he's actually seeking out.
I mean, he might consider himself to be Andy Kaufman. I'm not saying that, but that would be the meta thing. And I will say this. I got some of and I can't recall any of them, but he makes some of these little comments that do make me laugh. And I kind of appreciate how smarmy and obnoxious they are, no matter who he's making fun of. And for all the bad in those segments tonight, the line where Brian Keith is like, that baby better respect Chris Jericho. To me, it made up for everything else of all the bad. Like, I popped for that big time. I was like, and you see somebody that has been basically a nobody in AEW. I mean, I know they were like, oh, he's this good wrestler and he keeps losing. We're in this contract. I love to see guys show personality and come out of their shell, or maybe that wasn't that they were in a shell, it's that they never had an opportunity. And so that would be, to me, the biggest praise of this whole thing is Brian Keith is making more out of less, and good for him. So that to me is worth a lot.
So Scott from Tampa says, I understand the character, but is it worth the TV time, especially when he has Big Bill and that other guy as his lackeys? They were quick. I mean,
I was going to say these are 20, 30 seconds.
It's
not. You can shorten a match 30 seconds and you're not going to notice. I'm sorry, they're not 2-minute segments. I think it's fine.
I'm holding out a firm opinion, pro or con, on what Jericho's doing. I mean, Brian Keith gets an opportunity like, Menard. I'm glad Jericho, by the way, interacted with Matt Menard and Angelo Parker and kind of updated that. They never really formally broke up. They just sort of weren't together anymore. And Menard did his thing and Angelo was flirting with his now wife and mother of his child. And Jericho covered all that, which I think was, it was needed. I'm hesitating to say needed because it's not needed, but it's good. I mean, you want to tie up loose ends, and it was sort of a little bit of a "this is your life, Jericho" type moment to address those two. And also note that Matt Menard's taking over as color commentator. He's good at that. But I think Big Bill. I mean, I think Jericho. It's not altruistic entirely, but I do think he likes finding people that he thinks he can help elevate. I do think that is a genuine part of his craft that he takes pride in. So, and give credit to him. It wasn't just short guys he's hanging out with. I mean, he's had a lot of short guys who don't make him look small in, Garcia and Menard and Parker and now Brian Keith. He's got Big Bill next to him. Now, Big Bill's gimmick is being big. He's not uselessly big like Billy Gunn. He's actually usefully big. But yeah, so I mean, if this helps elevate Big Bill and Brian Keith, makes him more relevant, I'm okay with it. And his character is grating in a way that I think is intended. And I'm for self-aware gimmicks that get heat, Dan. As when you're unself-aware and getting an opposite reaction, that's one thing. But I still do stand by. I mean, this is genius in the sense that this is what Jericho was going to get either way. So he might as well. He created a gimmick that would make it look like. It's like when you trip on a sidewalk, oh, I intended to trip. No, you didn't. It's just sometimes we trip on sidewalks. So whether he's admitting it or not, in any overt way, this is him acknowledging this is kind of the direction I'm going to get. Let me build a character around it.
Yeah, there was a time not that long ago where there were real questions about whether they could keep putting him on TV. And that's not really a discussion right now, given the current character. So, and maybe I'm ridiculous, but I kind of Private Party interacting with him next week. Who knows what that'll be, but I'm kind of intrigued by it. I don't know. I think it might be a decent TV segment. I'll give it a chance. So we'll see.
Yep. Some comments in the chat area. Jericho telling the guy how to scoop food while doing it badly himself was great. That's BJF. Sean, who's just on with us, he said they should be doing more with Keith. He's talented in the ring. Ramen Noodle says Brian Keith will get this over just like Daddy Magic did. But Sean also is trying to get Private Party in with them. Doesn't help either. Yeah, I mean, Jericho admitting he parties a lot. That's good. I don't know. I mean, I was fine. I mean, they're setting up a match with Private Party, and Private Party haven't been doing much on Dynamite, so that can lead somewhere. I mean, ultimately, I don't know what they think their water level is as a group, and is it Keith Lee and Big Bill teaming up with Jericho at ringside? Is Jericho a tag wrestler with Keith and Big Bill's a singles wrestler? Are they just going to do trio 6-man matches? I'm not sure yet. Maybe they're still kind of finding their way based on the reviews for their work. But Private Party's fine. It's a way to get them on TV in a program that matters.
And I mean, I don't know. I just you should call yourself Public Party. I mean, it's so bad. I find it somewhat funny. I like that kind of with the nerdy guy on Saturday Night Live. I forget, this is 40 years ago with the hair sticking up. I mean, some of that over the top stupidity, I kind of appreciate, I guess.
Yeah. Zach Barber, who in his column at PWTorch.com, by the way, I enjoy proofreading it and every Wednesday afternoon and putting it up on our website, PWTorch.com. Zach Barber from Texas does a great job with his feud tracker for AEW, even if Zach and I don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, because I don't like 99.9% of what AEW does. The 0.1% he doesn't like is right now the learning tree is a dumpster fire. And that I'm exaggerating Zach's AEW fandom, but only slightly. But his feud record is great. I mean, it's a good overview and of what feuds there actually are and what the backstory is and where they're going, and really encourage people to check it out. It's pretty evergreen, even after Dynamite airs. Just go to PWTorch.com, scroll for it, or go to the opinion section to find it. We've got such a talented array of contributors. It's been, since I started the Promotional Torch newsletter pre-internet, it's been a niche of the Torch, a feature of the Torch to feature a lot of voices and give platforms to different people with different backgrounds and different passions and knowledge bases and points of view. And we continue that as one of our trademarks. We're not, I mean, maybe we should, but we're not chasing the SEO, trending hot story every day on PW Torch. There's plenty of sites that do that. AI can probably take over that soon. But I take pride in assembling a really good mix of writers. And hopefully our website is a site you'll hang out at and visit every day once you get past kind of the headlines and the social media ephemeral nonsense, and you'll appreciate the thoughtfulness that goes into the articles and the fact that they're well written and usually well edited. So there's a little plug for what we do, but it's also good to differentiate what we do from others out there. So people who are mostly consuming us through YouTube or the podcast understand you're missing out on some good writing and some talented people doing good work. Okay. BJF says, Wade, did you like Jericho telling the camera person to follow him so he had a reason for the following segments being filmed rather than just coincidentally cutting to them in time? Tony Khan, when I interviewed him on the eve of the debut of AEW Dynamite, told me he was never going to have an invisible camera backstage or a camera that just didn't seem to have a place, which gave me great hope. He was going to clean up a lot of the irritants of WWE. And unfortunately, there's still quite a few out there that he didn't clean up, but that is one he has been really good about. You don't have a camera in a locker room without an explanation. And, Jericho, when I say how smart Jericho is on certain things, I think he is on the same page as Tony is that you want to have an explanation for anything being filmed. It should fit a world in which if this were all real, would this be happening? WWE's still bad about that. They still show too many people texting on their phone for no reason or sitting around, and then it suddenly becomes interesting because someone happens to walk in. But you want to film them doing what they were doing without the interruption, but the interruption is portrayed as impromptu and unexpected. So I don't like that. I was hoping Levesque would clean that up. There's ways to fix it. He's cleaned up a lot. That's still there. But this was good, and it's a good point from BJF. There's a reason to have the camera there. Excalibur doesn't have to throw at everything Jericho's doing. I mean, it'd be good to have a little frame, Dan, explaining why are we indulging Jericho? Right. Like Excalibur, Tony Schiavone could say, I'm hearing through the headset, Jericho is just going around offering unsolicited advice to everybody. People need to see what a jerk this guy is. Let's go backstage right now. Like, I'd like that as a setup a little more than this is in the format sheet and it's now time for us to do it because we think it's entertaining, which is basically the unstated supposition of why they go to it.
Yeah. Every person that has power in wrestling should watch J.J. Dillon explain when they broke Dusty Rhodes' arm, how he paid the cameraman to film it no matter how bad it got. And then he was going to pay for the TV time to put it on the Superstation. It's not that hard. And this was better. At least they did. And maybe I'm just a sucker I didn't love everything Jericho did. I don't want to come across the wrong way, but kept calling the guy Larry, then Lonnie. I kind of found that funny. I don't know. I just
and Larry is CM Punk's dog, by the way, for conspiracy theorists.
There you go. See,
mm-hmm. Yeah.
The things we think are coincidental, maybe not so much. So,
yeah.
Just the horrible advice. I don't know. I'm a sucker for lame humor, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
And again, it was 20 seconds. It was in and out. And that was the thing. That could have dragged on really quickly. And I didn't think any of those things drug on all that bad either. They're intentionally bad, obviously.
Yep. Dan, what'd you think of Willow's promo tonight as a follow-up to, Renee asked her, how do you feel? Where's your head at after losing to Mercedes Moné and getting attacked afterwards? Willow congratulated her on her win, but said, my shoulders were pinned down for an 8 count. I'm ready to retire that, by the way, because who's going to kick out unless you hear the referee counting? If my shoulders are down and I'm covered and the crowd is counting, but the ref isn't, I'm in no hurry to kick out. So to me, that's a heel thing to brag about, but the babyface should know better. She might've been able to kick out. She just chose not to. That's probably a nitpick, but but still a point maybe worth making. So yeah, and I did like her line. You know, I mean, it's sort of a cliche, and I shy away from complimenting them ever. But she goes, wouldn't trust Stokely as far as I could throw him. But then she
Yeah.
added, I actually could throw him further than I anticipated, and I like that sense of humor. I like that she addressed her smile as her strength, but after being stabbed in the back, you don't know how dangerous that can be. I didn't think the syntax was perfect in terms of what she's trying to get at, and I've noticed that with her, but she's coming along well. And the thing that I like about her is it's like what I say about Danny Garcia. She just seems authentically nice. And that isn't always how baby faces come across. Like, she just seems like somebody who would have time for you. And she's a professional and enthusiastic and passionate. So Dan, your thoughts on that promo?
Yeah, I've said that before. Like, if I find out that she's like a horrible person, then I may have to turn in my person card.
Yep.
It's like you just kind of lose faith in humanity if some people turn out to be really evil and bad, and that would be the thing with her for me. I don't know if you saw the thing where that group of kids in New York that watch the wrestling, they have little things where they watch stuff on TV, and Willow came in and joined them, and you can just see what a genuinely good person she is with that. So I thought she did really well. I think of course, Statlander's character used to be a disaster, and she's doing really well. So they're both building themselves up to something that you want to see with compelling characters, and so I think that's a growing and good part of the show is that particular story. I know they're not the only two involved in it, but that's where it's headed, and I think they're both doing well.
Yeah. The Acclaimed. What'd you think of the Bucks cutting them off and then the Acclaimed confronting them backstage afterwards?
Well, I won't tell what someone texted me because you'll talk to him tomorrow. I don't want to steal his thunder for his show, but you might imagine what Todd had to say about that. They're in a rut, so how likable are they, and how much does that make the Bucks heel? I don't know, but I mean, it was okay. It wasn't like super well acted, I didn't think. And
by everybody or the Acclaimed or who?
pretty much everybody, I think. They did that little at the end. He was like, okay, we'll see you. We're ready. Like the very end, the Acclaimed move and they walked off had a decent line or something. And I guess I've kind of bought into the negativity on Billy Gunn too, based on several things he's done. So yeah, I'm a little bit over him right now, but they're clearly building to them in the Bucks, for better or for worse. And again, that was the thing is the Bucks, and they're doing this, but they were so like, when the Acclaimed were phony to the Bucks, like acting like, oh, this isn't any big deal. Thanks, boss. We love you. It's like you're like the third. Now Jericho kind of did it. The Bucks kind of did it. And now you're kind of doing it. And it just seemed a little much to me. So I didn't care for that segment as much because it seemed a little repetitive from things we've already seen, even though it was supposed to be different. Since I'm on camera, I feel like I should talk more, but that was my main point.
Oh, I'm still learning everything here.
I like it. I like the dynamics, but I'm like, this means I'm supposed to keep talking, and I don't like to do that when I don't have
and you kind of missed
the
hint.
Yeah, no, I don't. I have to filibuster in front of 20-year-olds a lot, and I wasn't ready to filibuster right there. I'm afraid
that's okay. I've got a good sense of when you're going to wrap up, and then all of a sudden I just didn't hit the right buttons to get back on screen after I took a sip of water. So anyway, we're learning. In a year I'll look back and I'll just be like, what was going on there? Anyway.
Along those lines, though, with some of the meta stuff, and they do a lot of this that are just subtle shots at WWE.
Yeah.
And because they didn't overdo it, when they went to Jack Perry and he was staring at that TV like ridiculously, but then turned and gave the promo, I was like, that is like, they're taking the shot, but they're not ruining my TV experience while taking the shot. You might recognize
Yep.
the shot. You might appreciate the shot. And I did.
Mhm.
I thought it was funny. But then he turned and faced the camera and gave another, Jack Perry's been doing well. Another good
Jack Perry's
promo.
good as he. Yeah, I mean, I was for him being punished for what he did. I think it's fair, unfair, natural, and understandable that somebody at his level would be punished for doing something that maybe somebody else with a little bit more stature wouldn't have been. But the fact is that CM Punk got fired and Perry got suspended or sent on an excursion, as Tony phrased it publicly in his first framing of what happened. But it's worked. I mean, it's worked out for him. He was not a good heel promo, and now I think he's inspired by real life, and so that's good. Early on in AEW, they made fun of another irritant in WWE, the wrestlers watching monitors at a side angle, and the Bucks did it to an extreme degree, mocking WWE. So, good for them, but they don't want to be hypocrites and start doing that. So, Perry was good. He was watching TV naturally. We still somehow magically knew it was him. Even though they weren't having him stand sideways. But yeah, him turning to the camera and being aware the camera was there, owning the setting.
Right.
It's not
Right.
invisible. It's not a sitcom. I mean, the cameras are there. This is a sport. This is a simulated sporting event, and it should be shot like a sporting event would be. And athletes know when there's a camera on them. They don't always have to acknowledge it, but if skaters on an NHL game are filmed in a locker room tying their skates, they don't have to look at the camera or not, but they know it's there, and looking at the camera isn't breaking a fourth wall. So what Perry did there made sense.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan, I want to just roll through some emails here to wrap up, if you're good with that.
Sounds good. I would say this, and maybe it's
Yeah.
I should email my questions to you and Todd, but I do think that this is not completely coincidental. Like, I think it makes a strong case for AEW to send certain guys to New Japan for an extended period of time, whether that be 3 months, 6 months, or even a year, depending on their level of experience. And that might be a good thing to discuss on one of your hotlines, or with Todd or whoever, or with Rich. I'll let you choose. But who would be some good candidates for AEW to do that with? Because I think that it's not coincidental that he came back more confident and less nervous and willing to, not to get Roosh excited, but take the bull by the horns. He's really done it. And I can't hear you, Wade.
That's on you, Dan, not me. No, that's on me. All right, let's go to our first email, and this is Ryan in Winnipeg. I just wanted to reach out and praise tonight's episode of Dynamite. The show felt more purposeful as they continue to build to Forbidden Door, covering many of the feuds expected to culminate there, and other newer feuds that are just kicking off, such as Willow Statlander and Young Bucks Acclaimed. The main event was nonsensical, but looking past that, I felt the show flowed well and didn't drag in any specific spots. One thing I noticed tonight was a lot of backstage segments, and is it fair to assume that's to keep wrestlers away from cutting promos to an empty hard cam side of the arena with their backs to the fans who paid to come to the show, which might cool them off? Anyway, much better show than last week's abomination, so props to the AEW team tonight. Thanks. Dan, I don't think there was a promo backstage that needed to be in the ring. I'd be fine with Renee interviewing people on a stage, but when you do, it's a good point from Ryan in the sense that when you have a smaller crowd, it does limit the camera angles that you can use for promos. So I don't think there's talking to an empty arena looking at a hard cam is just part of wrestling now. I mean, WWE's had a hot streak, but that's going to happen. I don't think they're going to change the format of their show to avoid that. But I don't know if there was a backstage promo that needed a ring introduction and all of that. I like the pace of the show and the setting that Willow gave a concise promo backstage.
Right.
That worked for me. And other things were just confrontations that didn't need to take place in the ring either.
The Danielson promo would have gotten over big with the live audience, but it's not necessary. And that would be the only one they could add. I mean, they had MJF out there and he went for a decent amount of time. So, and like you said, I mean, you are sacrificing something when you do the in-ring promo. It's not pithy. It doesn't keep the show moving. It may get people to tune into something else. And these shorter,
it tells viewers who don't care about that wrestler, tune out because it's going to be a while. And when it's backstage, you don't lose those people.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think it was well put together show as a general message of the emailer.
Yeah, and I don't think every show needs to be like blockbuster, major angle, epic, this and that. Like it's a 52-week a year show. it's okay to have a show like this that has the things that Ryan praised. It doesn't mean there aren't, details here and there in the larger booking scheme that, they can't clean up or change. But and not everything is going to be for everybody. Some people like the Jericho stuff, other people don't. So we'll, but formatting wise, I think this was kind of a sweet spot for them. It had the right mix of in-ring promo that meant something. It was MJF. It was his stage. It felt like a big deal that he got that. And then some good matches and some video packages and promos. I thought it was a sweet spot in terms of the mix and match of that.
Yeah, and again, my favorite part of the show is the Bryan Danielson interview, and because it is giving him a mission that he's needed for a while, and I hope they follow up with it. It adds a lot of intrigue. It adds a lot of intrigue to what's coming up. So.
I've been saving that a little bit because I know we got some emails on that. So we'll definitely delve into it when we get there. Daryl says, hi, Wade and Dan. As a viewer from day one of the AEW product, who as fans do we have to be invested in to win a singles title, male or female? The only one wrestler who's currently on a journey with an ambition to win any major title is Daniel Garcia. And with all due respect, Daniel Garcia will probably not be changing AEW's struggling ticket sales and TV ratings. Will Ospreay just won the same luck-based qualifying match twice in the same month to earn his title matches. Okada won a secondary title 1 month into his AEW run and is mixed in with one of the many insincere or disingenuous heel faction or acts in AEW. I find it very hard to be compelled to tune in each and every week to follow along with the evolving stories of the wrestlers when every show just seems to be focused so much on matches with no build, instead of building up a handful of wrestlers chasing after championships and moving their way up to the main event scene. I talk all the time about journeys. Wrestlers on journeys is one of the big selling points for drawing money and getting people to watch a show week after week. You need to pick out, and I wanted Tony Khan to pick out 6 or 8 main acts, map out a journey, and build the shows. As the skeleton, the structure of a show should be built around the journeys, setbacks, moving forward, whatever. And he's right. Danny Garcia has one, but this is a problem. The Bucks made fun of it. We had someone in the comment area mention it, that the Bucks made fun of a belt for you, a belt for you, a belt for you. And that was my jaw-dropping moment. Nothing MJF said shocked me more than the Bucks making fun of how many title belts Tony Khan has introduced in AEW. Good for them. It was a little bit meta, but to me, that's the problem is Roderick Strong loses a title and then he gets a shot at an even bigger title. Okada, when is he going to become world champion? Oh, he's already got a belt. Ospreay, when's he going to win an AEW title? Well, he's already got a title. Like, it's just that you can't go on a journey if you've already landed somewhere, even if that, you're not on at the top of the biggest mountain. When you're standing on top of a mountain, you're not climbing the biggest mountain. And AEW has too many people standing on small mountains for them to be on a journey up the biggest mountain. So I'm with Daryl on this. I mean, I think it'd be good to have more wrestlers on those journeys, and it's what I was looking for with MJF too, Dan. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to push back a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can shoot down any of these that you want to. I quickly wrote down people I feel like are on a journey to their hope is to win probably the world title.
Yeah.
And I wrote down 6 names or 6 different people. First, I'd say Will Ospreay is on that journey. He's earned, he's never shown any interest in. It's like, I can get this title, but to him, that's still a stepping stone to the world title. So I think that he is on a journey. It's just not the traditional journey. But, back in the day, the U.S. champion got shots at the NWA world champion, or the Missouri state champion got shots at the NWA. Just because you have a lesser title doesn't mean I like what he's doing because he's shooting for the number 1 title. FTR wants those tag team titles back. They've made no bones about it. They haven't been able to get it yet because the Bucks are maybe, using their power to keep them away from it. But that's a story. Claudio Castagnoli got his shot at Roderick Strong, presented himself well. They revisited that. They didn't ignore it. Not Roderick Strong. I'm sorry. Swerve Strickland. Swerve acknowledged the fact that Claudio gave him a good match, and that's on the undercurrent, but it's still brewing. What is this name? I can't read myself. I just wrote it down. I don't know. Bryan Danielson. Bryan Danielson just said tonight what his journey is, and I think that that's something that they want to go. Oh, Mariah May. Now it's hidden, but Mariah May is clearly motivated by winning the women's world title. Just because your journey isn't in broad traffic lights and under a spotlight for everybody. It can be a slow build. It can be a slow story. And again, I think Willow is determined to get what she considers to be, maybe it is the TBS title, not the world title, but she is determined to get a title back. So that's what I came to mind while I was sitting there listening to the email. I think those 6 people are on some sort of a journey along with Danny Garcia, and it may not be perfect, but it's not completely lacking either.
Yeah, I think losing a title and then wanting to get it back like Willow isn't a journey. It's you're in the midst of a feud. I mean, and so to me, I'm thinking of when I talk about that, and it's where Danny Garcia applies. It's the Bret Hart journey from tag team with Jim Neidhart to Intercontinental title to world title, and that upward movement, and there's times when over the last almost 5 years now, when if you watch Dynamite and then you didn't watch it for 6 months, 9 months, a year and a half, you tune back and you go, oh, Wardlow's still winning squash matches? Have I missed anything? The Bucks are still having matches, but they don't really have characters that I know anything about. And so many people have title belts. Who chooses who goes after what belt and why? So
there are too many belts, obviously. I
for sure. And that's what eats away at the journey aspect of it. Because if you lost a belt and won it, or you lost one belt and you're going after a different belt, that's not a journey. That's just sort of musical chairs. You're just sort of randomizing matches that that Tony Khan thinks will be good. No, you're right. Bryan Danielson tonight, and I don't know. No, I don't know when. Let me see when he sent the email. If it was before or after the Danielson. No, it was at the end of the show. So he had a chance to see the Danielson promo when he said only Garcia. But yeah, I'm obviously happy with Danielson in his promo tonight. And talking about his declaration. This is he's I think revised it slightly from like retiring but not promising one of a comeback match to I'm just not full time. But you can, I mean, is Ospreay and Okada full time? I mean, we don't see them every week. I mean, what does that even mean? He's back down a little bit. I mean, what we'll see. We'll see what it means. But yes, I'm very glad. I think that's really intriguing that he has moved himself into the Owen Cup. It's sort of what Jey Uso did on Monday, saying I want to be in the Money in the Bank. Suddenly, now you're in a conversation. So I do like that. I want Danielson on not a journey of dream matches that AEW lets him self-indulge in. I want him on a journey for something that fans can get behind and care about. And so that is a step in the right direction.
They would be just so wasteful to not take full advantage of whatever we want to call this, a countdown to semi-retirement, or I hope the guy, if he reconsiders, that's great because he's amazing. So
yeah.
You're getting some praise, Dan, for your
pushback.
All right.
Sometimes you need people on the home team there, fight the good fight, trying to defend the coach.
When Ramen and Zach are on your side, that's sort of baked in if you're complimenting AEW or defending them. So you wanted that third person to come in. Okay. Bandy, I don't know how to say.
Jacob. Jacobs.
Jake Boat. I don't know. Well, anyway.
Bright guy. Bright person.
He says, Dan, thank you, Dan. This guy gets it. Ramen said, Jesus, thank you, Dan. BJF said, great points, Dan. Zach said, Wade, your hate for Danielson's dream matches is a trip. At least you're consistent. I don't hate his dream matches. I just want AEW to draw money with what they're paying for Bryan Danielson, not indulge in. Dan, what do you think about this? That my frequent criticism of Danielson in his time in AEW, a lot of the time, just going like talking to this sort of subset of hardcore fans going, wouldn't this match be great against a guy that 90% of Dynamite viewers have barely heard of, if at all, but it's going to be a great match? And that's been a driving force that I think has derailed him from being a weekly character on AEW Dynamite that fans can understand his journey and invest in it, as opposed to, I just came to AEW because I just want to have a bunch of matches WWE whatever let me have. And I just, my hope, I'm not against the matches. They're great. I just want Danielson to draw money.
Yeah, they have not protected him enough. They have not. made him important enough. They've considered him to be bulletproof. I'm not. A lot of the dream matches, so-called, that I wouldn't say so-called, they really were, have been on Collision, which is probably not going to hurt the rating as much. It's kind of a harder core audience, so I guess I'm okay with it. But I agree to the point with they've allowed that to distract them from making him as important as he should be, and he's just not selfish enough. He loses too much, and that's a bit of an issue. So I like this refocus, and he has enough credibility that he can say, "Look, I know I've disappointed myself and my fans and whatever, and this is different. I'm sucking it up," and he can get away with that. So great. I really, really love that promo, and I love where hopefully it's going to go.
I love when wrestlers, and this is, I think some fans take for granted, like the WWE, and Michael Cole especially, they talk about WWE history so much now on commentary. They've got help with stats people sending stats. Like, when we last time we were in the city, 6 out of the last 7 backlashes this wrestler did. Like, they throw all these stats out there. They talk about things that happened 15, 20 years ago. In the WWF days, Vince McMahon didn't do that a lot, and wrestling fans were upset he didn't talk enough about history. And I know part of that was Vince didn't want to acknowledge the territories. He wanted to just have his own universe and his own canon and decide what was canon in his world. And I get that when you're number one, you can make that case and get away with it. And I'm somewhat sympathetic to that. But so I think people take for granted that that's a thing. But Danielson in his promo going, here's 3 things that I set out to do when I came up short. And I need to refocus. I can't keep having this disappointment, especially if this is the last year of my career. I need these last months of my full-time career to end or have this big crowning moment. And do you think he's going to win the Owen Cup tournament and headline against Ospreay or Swerve or whomever at All In, Dan, and at Wembley? I mean, if this is the end of Danielson's full-time career, giving him a main event match against Ospreay for the world title in a just dream match, speaking of.
And here's the thing. Here's what that accomplishes, Wade. I hope, first of all, I got a lot of favorites, but I think he's my actual favorite right now that's wrestling. So I'd like to see it from a selfish fan perspective. But when you think about it also, it's like, well, if Bryan Danielson's going to win the Owen Hart tournament, wouldn't he wrestle Will Ospreay at All In? So does that mean Will Ospreay is going to win at the Forbidden Door? And so it's like it has so many tentacles that goes out and makes other things more intriguing. And you might say, well, Bryan Danielson doesn't realize that. I'd say he does. Like, he knows the guy's brilliant. So that interview worked on so many levels to me. And I want to make the most of this. As high as I am on Ospreay and some of the others, like, I'm perfectly fine if there he is right there front and center on the front.
I just put up the All In poster, and I realized that he is right there next to Mercedes Moné as the most prominent wrestler on the poster. Now, it's an ensemble. He's only 8% bigger than Swerve Strickland and 6% bigger than Will Ospreay. And it's a little bit dated because I got Adam Copeland on it. I love that Tony Storm's in black and white. The Young Bucks, you think, would have the pull to be front and center, but they're way in the background, sticking their tongue out behind Okada. I always think there's things to read into, when it comes to this type of thing. And that might be a little bit of a tell, Dan, that when this was planned out, Tony might have said, we need Danielson in the front row next to Mercedes for the Wembley show this year.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be making a mistake putting your eggs in the Bryan Danielson basket. It's just, not going to be a mistake. So I can't argue against it by any means.
Yeah. All right. Let's go to Azan in St. Louis. By the way, we are a little thing on the screen. This is how many people are watching. We've held our audience and we're at the, near the 2-hour mark here, and people are sticking with us. So I appreciate that. And I take that as, an endorsement of the conversation and Dan, your contributions and the chat room doing their part, and everybody, Sean too. So just want to throw that in there. So Azan in St. Louis says, good evening, Wade and Dan. As I watched the excellent video package of Danny Garcia on tonight's show, a light bulb went off in my head. I realized that his hometown would host the Go Home show before Forbidden Door. So I wondered if it's possible for Garcia to win the international belt in Buffalo and beat Will before the big world championship match. Dan, would you have Will Ospreay lose, and would you have him lose to Garcia to get the belt off of Ospreay before he then wins the world title?
Yeah, assuming that he's going to win the world title at All In, which is
Yeah. I mean, what if that whole scenario, it's a big what if, but the whole thing.
Again, I kind of thought, this goes back to the earlier discussion, I kind of wanted him to lose to Danielson because then he could have avenged it and built himself up for All In. I don't think I'd have him lose the week before the big show. And again, I know that Danny Garcia has fallen short a lot of times. I don't know that it would be so bad for him to fall short against Ospreay and another. They could put him in the main event in Buffalo, and he doesn't have to win the belt. That would probably be the way I would go, because you don't want to run, and it's a minor risk, but you don't want to run the risk of diminishing your big main event. And then I think what you can do, I hate to be saying this, you could get rid of the international title. If you really wanted to, you could merge it in, but there's always the possibility of a tournament, which they do plenty of. But they need to condense the titles, so it wouldn't be the end of the world to just say, well, this is the world title, and now it has this one as well. So
Tony would score points if it came across like Tony was actually admitting he did something that didn't work out. And I mean, I think he would win. I mean, nobody likes to admit almost nobody likes to admit they're wrong. I think you should look for opportunities to admit you're wrong, especially if you're in public life. I mean, I just think it humanizes you. It makes you seem like a big person. And it would be good for Tony, like, to not just say everything is great with Collision has been great because of X, Y, and Z, and all these titles are great because it gives us more title matches and more opportunities for more wrestlers. Like, stop that. Like, it's not good to have this many titles. Admit it and find an excuse to get rid of one or two of them.
But to paraphrase what you just said, I'm in the process of our teacher training for our grad students that are going to teach in the fall, and I tell them, because people are nervous, obviously, and they want to get respect and convey a certain persona in the classroom, which is great. But I tell them some of the most powerful things you could tell these students is, I don't know. Like, no one knows everything. And especially in this day and age where they can check you pretty quick on their AI and whatever, you really don't want to sit up there and bullshit too much. And so, you might say, I don't know, but I'll get back to you on that in the next lecture. But it's okay to do that. And what you're saying about humility is a attractive quality. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. All right. Number 2 from Azan. At this point, I wonder if people will understand that Jericho wants the reaction he's getting, whether it's good or bad. They should have been silent during his matches and his promos if they wanted him off TV, but he's getting what he wants now. So yeah, we covered that earlier, but good point. I mean, the way to get rid of somebody from your TV is to turn the channel if you're a Nielsen home. Curtis Axel would be like, please don't turn the channel. That was his shtick, because the minute by minutes when he was on TV went down. So he's like, please don't turn the channel. That was his gimmick, which was weird. But yeah, I mean, just stand up and leave. Have empty seats. Have more empty seats and seat fillers if you really want to protest something. Yep. But I mean, my tendency is to be okay. Just to like what Jericho's doing right now. I mean, I totally get the pushback. I understand it. And you can, on general principle, go, I don't care if Jericho is doing a good gimmick. I just want him off my screen for X, Y, and Z. And I get that too. But I think this character is very self-aware and clever. But in small doses, and make sure it's helping put other people over too. Number 3 from Azan. Now this Wheeler Yuta has something I don't know what he does. I'm glad to see him back on TV. He's kind of like Dominic Mysterio, but without the character, and he is a better in-ring worker. They kind of treat Wheeler, the Blackpool Comic Club, like their son, who they're so proud of, like accomplishing something. You can tell they just genuinely have affection for him and want to see him succeed. I don't know how I feel about it, because it's so, he just seems like, this guy who they want people to care about. They want him to have success, and they're just sort of like have him there for that purpose. I don't know. I don't even know what
he got chance tonight. I was a little surprised.
He's really good.
I mean, they were noticeable chance.
Yeah.
from the crowd. And yeah, he is a very good wrestler, obviously. So that's part of it. I don't mean to diminish that, but yeah, he again, when it's a hardcore crowd, they're going to be more inclined to support guys like that. And if it's a small crowd, that may be why it came across as loud as it did. But I'd say give that time. I mean, it's his first night back, so we'll see if they have a bigger story in line for him.
Yeah. Zan finally says, after 3 years of people making a big to-do over New Japan, people randomly showing up on AEW TV during Forbidden Door season, this year seems to be more focused on current AEW storylines outside of the Mercedes match so far. There's not a lot left. I mean, New Japan isn't where it was, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. So part of it is just less options. They brought in Okada, and I don't know. Dan, what do you think about Forbidden Door season this year versus past years?
So I'm we're getting close, right? We're 3.5 weeks. You think you've got to have Naito on there. I would assume Tanahashi, but yeah, and Zach, I would think. And they did have Jeff Cobb, win some matches recently. So I think we'll see that, but it's time to, if you're going to, and of course they're mixing in with CMLL guys too, but yeah, you need to have a real presence of New Japan on there. Otherwise, just call it a different pay-per-view and shut the thing down. And I know they don't have as much star power as they used to, but Suji's really good. The young guys are really good. And, there's some potential there. Shooter, obviously they've done the thing with him and Moxley already, but those are guys that I would hope they would feature, some of those young charismatic guys, Hiromu, as well. So I think it does seem to be a little slow, and I hope that's not an indicative that they won't have a decent number of New Japan guys on there, and not in something like 8-man. I mean, they need to have real matches with the New Japan guys on this show. You've got Swerve and Ospreay, so and it could be, like I said, it could be Yota Tsuji or Shooter Umino or something like that. But I hope it's not just another AEW pay-per-view with a weird name.
Yep. All right, so let's go to Greg in Waterloo, Iowa, who said, I just wanted to give a quick observation on the Forbidden Door card. This card reminds me of those WWE One Night Stand shows that quickly became just another WWE show after a year or two of it being actual WWE versus ECW. 2 of the 4 matches announced so far exclusively involve AEW signed talent, with the exceptions being the 2 women's title matches. MJF versus Rush should be another match with AEW exclusive talent. Is it just me, or would the main event feel a lot more special if Ospreay had not been signed and not already had a number of showcase matches prior to challenging for the AEW World title at Forbidden Door? That's interesting. He said, it's an imperfect comparison, but I'm reminded of how the One Night Stand became just another WWE pay-per-view after the first couple of shows, which actually felt special. By the way, on our VIP feed, our VIP podcast vaults that we put up almost every day, we're in that right at that One Night Stand time with the brand relaunch, and it's just, I catch myself listening back to our shows back then. The concern about how Vince McMahon is going to do. Is he going to give Heyman the freedom he needs? Why are these WWF or WWE guys on this One Night Stand card? So we're getting up to the review of the first one. So yeah, go VIP.
Well, I assume it's a review of the second one if they're going to relaunch ECW, because the first one was one of the greatest shows ever, and it was an ECW show really. But the second one's where they put the WWE guys on there, and then the ECW they launched was horrible. Right after that.
Yeah, and I just think until they had the first show, there was no trust that Vince McMahon was going to give the type of autonomy to Heyman to make that show work. And so
well then if it's the first show, I mean, then they took a year off and came back and launched ECW a year after the first show. The first show was phenomenal. And so
that's the thing. No, the reviews for the first show were fantastic, but when you get into John Cena and Rob Van Dam,
that's the second year.
that's it. Yeah, and that's what we're talking about now. Just for
that's what I thought. That's what it sounded like, and it's like,
but
there were so many warning signs that was going to be the show itself was pretty good, but the
Yeah.
ECW they launched was going to be a disaster, and boy was it.
But the 2005, the first one, there was concern going in too. I mean, like,
Yeah.
would Paul
Yeah.
Heyman and
Yeah.
listening back to our concern about that and our worry about that. But as Greg is saying, you start off special and it's distinct, and the Forbidden Door one night stand comparison kind of works because between 2005 and 2006 and then beyond that it lost what it was, but it was successful, so they wanted to go back to it. But once everybody's integrated, it's just now it's hard to have a first time reunion show 1 year later. I mean, it's why CM Punk didn't make as much of a difference to WWE as he would have had he not had a stint in AEW first. There was a lot of curiosity about Punk, and now he's just another wrestler jumping rather than a guy who was away for nearly a decade. So that's bound to happen, but we're getting into that now in those 18 years ago shows, like these WWE guys. Oh God, is this going to live up to the previous year's one that was a home run? And one of the great pleasant surprises in pro wrestling history, in a way, how well done that was, and how much Heyman had going. Okay. So
let me just say one other thing,
yeah.
Wade, because I can
Yeah.
hear people being like, this guy's supposed to know New Japan. Gabe Kidd's another guy they need to feature on Forbidden Door. He is outstanding lately, and that's something they have to do. And I'd rather they not, what Zach's saying, I'd rather it just be in New Japan Pro Wrestling myself. I'm not against CMLL, but I got into this because I wanted to see New Japan and AEW, and I think that they do have a lack of depth, but they have enough depth where they could make this a compelling card. And then if you make the Swerve Ospreay match the exception to the rule, that's great. And Moxley will obviously be defending the IWGP title on there too, which is a little weird, but it still works. That's fine. So,
yeah. If Ospreay hadn't been signed, and this was like his first, it wouldn't be his first, but like if he hadn't been almost a weekly fixture and somehow he earned a title shot, would this feel, and he weren't international champ, would this work better coming in for the Forbidden Door format? As can this quote outsider win? If he does, is he going to be signed full time? You can even kind of kayfabe the signing and turn it into, if Ospreay wins, he's going to stay. I don't know. I mean, there's just
you'd have to do it the way you're presenting it, because if it's if he does win the title and he's a New Japan guy, he's not going to hold it for very long. Mm-hmm. And of course, I think part of it is the evil Moxley match. Well, they have to get through that, and then they can do more with the New Japan side, because nothing in New Japan happens until it happens. So that's probably part of it as well.
And Greg's second part here is now to the AEW Women's Division. I'm glad Mercedes got to prove herself in the ring once again, because that's where she excels the most, and she needed a strong in-ring performance after all the criticism she received for her recent appearances. Right now, I think it's the best time for the women for women's wrestling in AEW history. I agree with that. I think the division is pretty clearly in a stronger place than it's ever been. That said, the women's world champion remains a comedy character who delusionally believes she's a 1940s movie star, or does she? Involved in a storyline that regularly features subtle and non-subtle sexual innuendos and straight-up sexual activity. People who have been not watching Dynamite are like, whoa, I need to tune in. Or I'm glad I'm not, depending on you. But anyway, while Toni Storm remains super popular, I believe that this is going to continue to make it hard for a good portion of the fans to take her matches really seriously. I'm interested to see how this is handled in the months ahead, as Mercedes is very clearly being positioned as a serious wrestler, as opposed to the other top stars, the world champion, who is still a complete comedy act, now with overt sexuality added to the act. We talked about Toni Storm earlier. I mean, eventually, like Toni Storm, like I don't think we got into it, but did you agree with my premise, Dan? I don't remember that this was the most babyface Storm had been. Just in a booking 101 sense, Toni was more babyface than she had, I think, ever been this week.
I think so. She's supportive of her teammate, for lack of a better word.
Her teammate was chasing Saraya around the ring, and Storm was there to check on her afterwards and fending off heel attacks. And so the point I bring that up is sometimes it's like, are they just reacting to the crowd? They don't really have a clear, definitive framing of some of these characters. And like with Mercedes, I've been wondering that. So if they want to do a Toni Storm Mercedes match, like that's a big women's match because they're both concurrently champions. Now, I want Mercedes to be a heel at that time. I want Storm to be a face. And I don't think she can't be a serious wrestler despite having this gimmick, but I understand that criticism. It's not for everybody. But she plays it so smart, and you can get into the whole thing. It's like they said with Goldust, is he really this, or is he just playing
Right.
mind games to get under Scott Hall's skin and throw him off? I think that's within the realm of, if you want to fill that in on your color by numbers, self assessment of Toni Storm. Is she delusional, or is she marketing herself and also trying to mess with the minds of her opponents? I think there's room for that.
Yeah, and I've had that criticism of Toni Storm a few months ago, and
Yeah.
I think she's gradually doing more serious stuff in the ring, bell to bell. And if that's happening, I think that makes my objections much lighter. And that's kind of the direction I've been moving as I've been watching her in recent weeks and months.
Yeah. Yeah, Zach Barber says Toni is a babyface with Mariah. And I think people have been wanting that to be just clear, definitive, no ambiguity. She's use her color commentary as against heels, and that's what I might, sort of critique of MJF. It's like, aim your digs at heels who have it coming, and don't undercut Okada's physique, or make Ospreay look like he's, just some stereotypical, UK guy with bad teeth. So anyway, but yeah, I think they're in a good spot. So I hope, I still want Mercedes to be a heel, and and I want her to be on the journey to that, but I want it to be obvious that that's what they're doing. We want to have strong feelings one way or the other about her, and they just haven't stuck with it yet. All right. Hopefully, maybe just me texting a bunch of people in AEW led to that being a discussion point this week, and they're like, "Yeah, we gotta figure this out." All right. David is up next in the inbox. I've been enjoying Jericho's learning tree, but he laid it on way too thick tonight. MJF was on fire in that promo. He's a babyface based on fan reaction, but he's not afraid to ruffle the other babyface's feathers. Roosh is a fine opponent to get his swim legs back. Swerve had a fine showcase match. He and Will should be good, but he needs a proper feud with big name heel. I'm not sure who fills that role. So yes, the Jericho thing we've covered quite a bit. There's no question with this gimmick. There's going to be different degrees of how much people want to see of him. But as Dan, you and I agree, they weren't long segments past kind of the first one, I think. As far as MJF being on fire, going after baby faces, yeah, that's good. It's my critique is just be more original with your critique of the baby faces. Don't make fun of somebody not being a steroid freak, and maybe find something other than bad teeth. That's just so low-hanging fruit for an American say about a UK guy. So I think so highly of MJF. I want him to bring it I wanted him to be more clever than what some schlub that he'd make fun of would say. That's what I thought he did in those two instances. The main point I want to throw to you on this, Dan, is Swerve. Does he need a proper feud with a big-time heel for this to feel like a legit title reign instead of, not? I mean, they don't have a lot of that in AEW right now who are healthy and active. So, it's tough. But I mean, that would help him. Like, just let's get him in there with somebody who fans just want to see him beat up. But Roderick Strong is really good. He's going to give you a really good match, and I think he rose to the occasion here and made the most out of it. But it's still Roderick Strong. It's not a top-level heel.
Yeah, but I think he's really playing. I shouldn't say playing. Well, he is though. World champion really well. Like, his interview came across like a world champion. Again, I know Todd's opposed to this, but you got all these. You got Grandma Dance doing. I won't do it on camera, but doing the Swerve dance at the end. He's cool, man. Like he's and he. To me, he's growing into the part of the world champion. I know he was on Busted Open this week, and I saw some stuff, and people give him nonsense, and he throws it back in their face in a pretty compelling way because he believes in what he's doing, and he's never going to portray himself as being treated unfairly, whether he is or not, when he's publicly out there as world champion. I think he's getting treated pretty fairly, and I really thought this was a good night for him. Like, I thought the interview, the match, and the post match were all really good. And yeah, I mean, people are fans of that guy. I'm a fan of that guy. And so to get to the point, they don't Christian was one of the better heels they had. Like, he's got to be top 3 or 4.
Yep.
And I'm having a hard time coming up with the other ones that are healthy and active right now.
But people didn't think Christian was going to beat him. That's the
I
problem.
didn't
You want a
either.
heel who feels like a threat. Yeah.
Okay, but I'm going somewhere with this. So what I'm saying is you do the Christian thing, you get out there and defend against Roderick Strong in a tremendous match that, yeah, we all know he's going to win. But if his matches are Will Ospreay and Bryan Danielson and Kazuchika Okada and who, John Moxley. I mean, I don't think all these are going to happen, but it's like, they don't have to be heels. He doesn't have to wrestle heels. He could be the world champion that wrestles everybody. And that's what the world champion's supposed to do. They're really not supposed to just wrestle heels or baby faces. They're supposed to wrestle the best. And so if he's doing that in the next few months, let's go. Because I feel like you're cooking with gas then. I don't know where they're going to go. And again, I'm intrigued by that. As we've talked about, I don't want to know where they're going to go. But there's enough ambiguity there that makes it fun to watch. And Swerve, if he's champion for another week or another year, he's making the most of every minute as champion, in my opinion.
Yeah. So Okada, by the way, is the big serious heel that can work. I mean, on your list of wrestlers, I think Okada ought to be a more serious person and let the Bucks be more comedy. I know it's fun to do comedy on American television if you're Okada, and ham it up, but I would like to see Okada be a little more Solo Sikoa in the bloodline, in the sense of just I'm a more serious person who is I don't know. I mean, I don't want Okada to fall into, it's fun to do comedy.
I think they're going to get there soon enough with Okada, though. I think this is a temporary thing. And it was worked to some degree for the Anarchy in the Arena, and so let's see where they go in the next few months.
Yep, that's fair. Troy in Portland says, just curious if you think we could be getting either Danielson Ospreay 2 or Danielson Swerve at All In this year. I mean, if he wins a tournament, I assume Ospreay and Swerve are the two people who are 98% likely to be world champion by then. I don't know that they're going to find a curveball to throw at us in the meantime. So Danielson winning the tournament, earning the shot, explains the tournament and I mean, obviously there was a reason Tony did this, not just to, like troll WWE by copying them or whatever, assuming he was aware. Danielson winning a tournament to earn the shot makes sense, especially because Danielson hasn't, he's just been seen as a guy doing his thing in BCC. So this is a way for him to really establish he deserves, by winning a prestigious tournament, hopefully loaded with top talent, that he deserves to headline in what is AEW's biggest show, literally in terms of crowd and stadium and setting.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident that Swerve, Ospreay, Danielson, 2 of those 3 will be in the main event at All In. I could be proven wrong, and I don't know which 2 it's going to be. I hope Danielson's in there, though, after what we saw tonight. I just think it's a disservice not to make the most of him, and I think his career is winding down, obviously. So that's what I would like to see.
Yep. All right, Shane Brooklyn says, Dynamite hit my favorite balance tonight. It had nice story segments and promos, a great in-ring promo, and fun matches. Swerve, MJF, Ospreay are not only in top form right now, but they're giving off energy of people that want the top spot and all the responsibility that goes with it. Swerve has it. Ospreay, we haven't heard from lately, but has given that off, at least on Dynamite. And then MJF, is saying he's a top guy, but he didn't, like we said, didn't specifically lay that out. But he was, like you made a good point, he's interrupted before he got to ostensibly all his points. Swerve has been doing so much outside media and carrying the belt around like it's the biggest honor for him. It's a hungry main event scene, and I love seeing it from newer guys. AEW can't go wrong with any of the 3, and it's a nice place to be. That's a good tie into our last email. Now that the Own Cup is for the All-In main event, the tournament feels bigger. I'm interested in seeing who's in it. We can only assume it'll be worthy guys. No, we can't. We don't. That's not the only assumption we can make. We can fear it won't be top guys, that Wheeler Yuta will be in it, and that Tony will put people in who can have good matches but have no chance to win because he wants to save the matches. So it is inaccurate to say we can only assume it'll be worthy guys, Dan.
We're certainly hoping it will be. We're certainly hoping it will be. But yeah, that's fair semantics right there.
It's just semantics.
And based on previous experience too.
That's a thing.
So
he goes on. Yeah, for sure. Oh, for sure. And they can do it. I mean, good workers. We don't need like Buddy Matthews in it just because he's going to have a good first round match. Like, put people in it who earn it.
It should make
Um,
sense.
yeah, get Jay White in there, even if you don't plan to have him win. I mean, just like
Absolutely.
it's a slight to not have him there. By the way, speaking of heels who can face Swerve, Jay
That's
White.
one.
Yep. That's not in case no one in the chat room yelled that, but maybe somebody listening did. We couldn't hear you. I had MJF for Page winning it all, but Brian just cut a promo that made me doubt my picks. I'll be at Forbidden Door, and I'm feeling like I could not have been blessed with a better and more unpredictable main event. Really could go either way, and there's no doubt they'll have a great match. Ospreay's a favorite, but I'll be really disappointed to see Swerve's run cut short because I really think he's doing a fantastic job selling himself as the champ. So earlier this week here on the PWTorch YouTube channel, we did we said what was, I can't remember the exact graphic, I can look it up, but what was Tony thinking putting Ospreay against Swerve at Forbidden Door? And it sounds like, what was Tony thinking? But it was more, what was Tony thinking? If you watch our video, we're just trying to figure out what the quote was, what was Tony thinking giving Ospreay a title shot at Forbidden Door? And Greg Parks and I on Sunday talked about this for 12 minutes in our 12-minute hot take segment. What's the rationale? And I was saying, we can't judge till we see. I mean, this could have a master plan. With what Danielson did tonight, maybe that answers that he wants Danielson to headline Wembley. Ospreay can headline next year. He's going to need for the third one, speaking of one night stand, diminishing returns, Forbidden Door, he needs a big main event for Wembley 2025. Maybe Danielson, this is his year. It's the end of Danielson as a full-time wrestler, natural story to tell. Maybe it is Danielson Swerve. And he saves Ospreay for another year. Or this Ospreay's going to win, but it makes sense for him to have this dream opponent, this top tier guy, this legend, this legacy star in Danielson. And now it makes sense why he had Ospreay win it, not at Wembley, but defend it at Wembley against Danielson. If that's what's happening, I think it answers a question Greg and I asked 3 days ago on the 12-minute hot take, which I encourage people to check out if you haven't yet. We've done some hot takes, including on should AEW be worried about their next TV deal. The latest one is just, is Chad Gable a better fit for WWE or AEW? And is he on the way to being a main event wrestler now that he's dropped a lot of the comedy? Kind of the case I'm making for Okada to lean away from that, or don't lean in any more than that. So yeah, I mean, maybe we got our answer here on Dynamite, Dan.
Well, and initially I thought that the match at Forbidden Door was going to lead to a rematch at Wembley, where Ospreay would probably win.
This can't, no.
unless
the loser enters the tournament.
Yeah,
they can't
exactly. And so what you're saying, though, if Ospreay does, and look, if Swerve loses at Forbidden Door, he needs to get another run as champion, and he will eventually, I think, because he's done an outstanding job. And I don't know which way they're going to go with it. And you could say, but if Ospreay loses to Danielson this year and then he comes back challenging the next year, that's another. You got a lot there where people will still want to come see, Ospreay win the day. So there are a lot. Again, this to me is intriguing for all the right reasons, because what Danielson said tonight makes everything more intriguing that's coming up, in my opinion.
Yeah. We could end up going this, and I mean, I was always open to this totally making sense. It just was an obvious question to ask. Why are they doing this? And is going to be less special if he enters as champion, but if he's not in a rematch with Swerve, I mean, you still have the issue of, is it fair to Swerve? I mean, as Swerve's been doing a great job doing media, and he's just starting to, gain momentum, and then the bad timing of Wembley and signing Ospreay full time and Danielson's last year, and it's just sort of unfortunate. It's like Drew McIntyre during the pandemic. Like, is that a motivating factor for Swerve? He can't really talk meta, like, well, I would have been a world champ if not for, the Ospreay signing and Danielson retiring. But it can be a moment of growth for his character that gets people behind him even more. I mean, there is a way to tell that story. I don't think people should just think, they're giving up on Swerve. That was his, Kofi Kingston moment, and now it's over. I don't think that's going to be the case for Swerve, even if he loses in a few weeks.
Absolutely. And, a lot of guys traditionally would win the world title, not for a particular, Harley Race, back in 1973, was a fill-in because of the Briscoe Funk thing, and he held it for a couple months. I mean, he's a young man, and he's incredibly talented, and he's been a great champion, and he'll have more days as champion, whether that means he beats Ospreay at the pay-per-view or if he loses it, and I think gets it back eventually.
Zach mentions in the chat room, I think Danielson will face Nigel McGuinness at Wembley. Sean said, I think Nigel will be healthy. Dan, what do you think about that? If is that
was
is
the
that
assumption.
going up? Yeah, and I get that, but is that back down the road of Danielson having sort of a dream match? I mean, I watched those two in ROH have a 60-minute draw. I shot photos ringside for it. It was fantastic. Great wrestling memory. But in 2024 at Wembley, can they heat that up where it feels worthy of Danielson? And I asked that sounding like I'm skeptical of it, but it's just a genuine question. Do you trust AEW to not just get the Wembley crowd and the Danielson long-term ROH fans engaged, but is that enough? Is there enough time to get Nigel over with everybody else that they're trying to bring in?
Well, and again, I'm thinking out loud here, but looking at that being a very special match, there's no reason they couldn't. And I don't want to. I don't know how old Nigel is, and if 1 year is going to make that much of a difference. But they've waited. They talked about it last year. They could do that in 2025. I know they've been building it on Nigel's commentary. He's been excellent about it. But Nigel's going to stay on commentary for another year. And if Danielson is pretty well retired a year from now, but wrestling at some of the big shows, then that becomes a special event attraction that can be a one-off. And you're not giving. You're losing something if you don't give. They could do that's part what BJ's saying is exactly possible. But I think you're losing something if you do another false promise from Bryan Danielson, who's the hero. That's probably the greatest wrestler in the world, at least for the last 20 years. He should come through. I think your baby faces need to come through at certain times, and he's failed enough. That's my opinion.
Do you? Raman says he'll need to be over for one night, and he will be in London. I mean, I'm not against that as long as the alternative for whoever the world champion is also good.
Opportunity cost, Wade. That's the econ term. To me, the opportunity cost, given what I know, the opportunity cost of Nigel and Bryan this year is too high, and they could just as well do it in 2025. That is my belief.
Yeah, I think that's a more than reasonable stance to take, and I'm sympathetic to it. All right, speaking of Zach, he emailed. He said, I really wanted to shout out the women's division tonight. Statlander starting to shine as a heel, and tying her in with Trent and OC makes sense. Willa being more serious was a nice change of pace. As Dan said, Mercedes cut her best, albeit pre-taped promo. I'm glad they addressed the previous match between Mercedes and Vakir. Unlike Wade, I don't have an issue with Mercedes going back after a title she was meant to win in the first place. Meant to win? That's the part I have an issue with. I mean, you can create a title and expect and hope somebody wins. And I guess that's the kayfabe explanation for what she said. New Japan, I had a chance to go to Japan. They created a title for me, but I had to do my job and win it, and I didn't. I mean, this whole thing blaming Willow for hurting her. The job of a wrestler in a match is ostensibly to hurt your opponent so you can win. I mean, this whole whining, Willow hurt me too hard. It's like when they clear the announce desk, and I always write, the heel's clearing the announce desk because he wants to hurt his opponent, but not too badly. So let's take out the things that could hurt him too badly. It's just, in that case, I think she should have said, I didn't do my job rather than whining about it, but that's been said. So Tony Storm continues to be a blast. Where the breast wrestle. I love Tony Schiavone correcting. No, it's where the best wrestle, not breast. He's a good straight man. We practice all kinds of head moves. You have to pay attention to her commentary because you don't know what she's going to say. Totally agree. Love it. Mariah May pulled a pretty good match out of Saraya, though I was stunned Saraya won. I wasn't as stunned as people are, but I get why. The post-match with Mina Shirakawa was fun. It's a love triangle, but not a love triangle. It's an interesting story, and they've been building it for weeks now. I'm glad the women's division is finally shining. Yes, I mean, it is, Dan.
Yep. I don't know what to add to that.
Yep. All right, so I will close here with JB from Detroit. Most of this we talked about. Is MJF talking down Swerve and Ospreay the best idea in his first televised promo back? That's been debated. I am skeptical it was. Can we stop the arbitrary multi-man and stipulation matches to decide who's going to face Ospreay for his title every week? That would be nice. Maybe just don't have world title matches decided on short. Just given out. I like the prospect of a mixed tag with Willow and Orange Cassidy against Statlander and Trent Beretta. I think there could be strong chemistry for both teams. Also, Willow's turning into a consistently good to great promo. I don't think she's great yet. Let's save that for when she earns it. But she's on a good path right now, and she's certainly improved. And great is in the realm of possibility, but let's let her like really earn that. Don't give it "This is awesome" chant 90 seconds into her promo match, into her, you get it. But yeah, the mixed tag, Dan, I think would work.
Yeah, it would. Yeah, it would.
Yeah.
My comment on MJF is, and I kind of stated this before, but
Yeah.
I'd rather him err on the side of tearing people down too much than being golly gee, nerdy, not MJF. So not to say that what he did was perfect, but I would. You certainly don't want to go too far the other way. I mean, he needs to have an edge.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Bad teeth in Great Britain. I'm smoking pot in Colorado, and Okada doesn't look like he has a gym membership. I don't know. It's either trite, cliche, or low-hanging fruit, or counterproductive. So, yes, have an edge. Just be a little more clever. That's all I ask, and I know he's capable of it. But you're right. I mean, he definitely shouldn't be golly gee, I'm going to be. I mean, I feel like I'm setting myself up for, you want MJF to go back to being the guy pandering to fans. It's like, no, there's like this vast middle ground between those two binary extremes. I just want him to be edgy and insult opponents, and he can pick on baby faces too, but don't do it the way he did tonight. I think he can do better, especially when he had months to think about this. The contrast between Brian Keith and the rest of Learning Tree stable is interesting. I assume that it is intentional, but I'm admittedly curious to see where it's going. Yeah, I mean, Keith is the more, serious guy. He's not doing comedy, which I like. That's why my argument with Okada, let the Bucks do the comedy. Jack Perry actually is more serious than even Okada at this point. So they kind of have their serious guy. But yeah, I mean, good point. Will Mina Shirakawa be the fulcrum that finally causes enough tension to cause the breakup between Mariah May and Toni Storm? I see Mariah versus Toni being the women's title match at Wembley. Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's, if they go that way, and I keep asking, was this the most babyface Toni Storm was? Do you think Mariah May, if they break up, is the heel or the face relative to Toni when they feud? Can they do either, or is it obvious? Is there one way for you that's the obvious direction to go?
Seems like Mariah would be the heel initially. That's my thought. I wouldn't say it's completely obvious, but that seems to be the direction.
Yeah. With Danielson's fired up speech about his last full-time year in pro wrestling and just falling short, does that mean we're getting him winning at the Owen and getting a title match at All In against Ospreay the final time? I do like the fact that the Owens tournament seems to be treated as something of prestige this year. If Swerve isn't part of the AEW title match at All In, what will he be doing? He mentioned the new Elite tonight. I could see him in a Continental title match against Okada or a TNT title match against Jack Perry if he wins the latter match. I mean, it'd be a step down for him to be in a match for a secondary title. I'd rather have him in a grudge feud than just suddenly wrestling for a secondary title. I think the optics on that are bad, Dan.
I agree. Yeah. And it might be a multi-man match, but I mean, you'd hope maybe the Bucks are defending their tag titles there. So I don't know.
Yeah. With rumors of Natalya's contract almost up in WWE, or I think they're just reports, is there any chance that she shows up in the women's Owen Hart tournament for namesake? If so, I could see her making the finals and losing to give the current roster member a big boost. Natalya would be great in AEW. She worked with Ronda Rousey and turned Ronda Rousey into a passable, wrestler with all of Rousey's awkwardness and ego and whatever. I mean, that was and Natalya, they sent her to NXT not to pop ratings, but to work with the younger women and give an honest assessment of how good they are and where they need to improve and give advice. So Natalya would be great in AEW as, I don't want to use the term, well, I'm going to, gatekeeper, but more of a, veteran evaluator and just help the division. I think she'd be a genuinely good player coach.
I was going to use that term, player coach. Yeah, she had the little Owen reference in her interview. Enough is enough.
Yeah, she did.
So
maybe that was foreshadowing.
Yeah, it could be, and maybe she snuck it in there. And like what would be really cool, and I don't expect to see it in 2024, but Roddy Piper let his contract expire so he could wrestle for Don Owen a few months after WrestleMania at the big Portland anniversary show. I mean, if her contract's up and she wants to enter that tournament and do that, and then maybe WWE, maybe she goes back. I mean, that they're supposed to be independent contractors. If she's not under contract, then why would they hold it against her that much? And I don't know. So there's a lot of different ways you could go.
Heck of a point and an interesting scenario. Finally, it was a better chance of winning the vacated title at Forbidden Door. Jack Perry to Takeshita. Both are important AEW stables and could use a big win to help their momentum. As always, love the show and go VIP. I mean, Takeshita's been jobbed out. I think Jack Perry is I mean, I don't know. I guess Jack Perry seems like the one who should ultimately win it, and then just, gloat and while complaining about having to go through a whole process when he was inevitably going to win anyway. What do you think?
It seems like Jack Perry is the chosen one right now.
Yeah. All right, Dan, anything else you want to add?
Gosh, Wade, we got through all my notes tonight.
Yes,
I love
good.
the heart attack move. I love the heart attack move by the BCC. I had that noted. Speaking of the hearts, but no, I just every time I'm on here, I get great feedback. I appreciate the compliments. It's good for my ego and all that, and I always enjoy having a chance to talk wrestling with you. And I'm glad it was well received. It sounds like so. Great.
Well, we have our VIP graphic up on the screen for our YouTube visitors who are new to what we do. Go VIP, get our 18 Years Ago podcasts, which are fun. Post pay-per-view and PLE roundtables are VIP exclusive, audio only on our VIP podcast feed. It's compatible with Spotify, with the Apple Podcast app. You don't have to go to advanced settings or enter a password. We got a really good system set up. Just about any app out there we're compatible with. If on Android, if they have any kind of just ability to enter an RSS feed. And also 35 years of archives, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s that are fascinating. You can lose yourself in our archives, just reading our contemporaneous coverage of everything that happened from the late 80s on, and new content every day, VIP exclusive. Plus, on the podcast side of things, you get the ad-free version of our podcasts that are free, along with all the ones you see on the screen right now, like The Fix with Todd Martin, Everything with Rich and Wade, the Wade Keller Hotlines, Greg Parks Out Loud, Alan Coonan's Pro as Paradise, NXT 8 Years Back, on and on. Some great content, including our Impact show. If you're into Impact, TNT Impact, we've got a show dedicated to that every week, and more. So check out details, pwtorch.com/govip. We'd love to have you as a member. It's a great way to show support, and you get a lot in return for that VIP membership. Dan, once again, thank you so much. Really like that we've turned this into a regular thing. Glad it's working out on Wednesdays, and we will talk to you soon down the line here.
All right, I look forward to it. Hope to see some folks in Waterloo at the National Wrestling Trade Says Hall of Fame. I'm hoping to see you there, Wade.
I know. Yeah.
I'm
working out
out there.
No, I'm trying to get my son to give me his schedule. There's a lot going on this summer, and I'm trying to just figure out what I can fit in and what I can do. So I can't speak to it yet, but it sounds attractive, and it's a short drive. So, and it's been a little while, so it'd be really fun to do.
Yes, sir. All right. Cool. It works out. Thanks again.
Great. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll talk to you Friday night after SmackDown. And check out the flagship if you haven't yet, our Blue Logo show. Really good conversation with Rich Fenn this week.